I collapsed on stage before thousands, yet the announcer kept calling my name. Doctors dialed my parents repeatedly, but the phone just rang into silence. Waking up in the ICU, I did not see my family. I saw a photo of them beaming on a luxury cruise. My phone held dozens of missed calls, yet no one asked if I was alive. The first text simply read, "Do not tell the hospital anything. Call back now. My name is Millie Green." And the last thing I remembered before the world turned sideways was the smell of floor wax and the deafening feedback of a dropped microphone. I was 23 years old, standing at the podium of the Lakeview State University arena, wearing a gown that felt heavy enough to be made of lead. I was the valedictorian. This was supposed to be the defining moment of my academic life, the culmination of 4 years of double shifts at Cedar and Cream Cafe and nights spent studying until my eyes burned. I had written this speech on the back of napkin receipts. I had practiced it in front of the cracked mirror in my dorm room until I could recite it in my sleep. We stand here today not just as students, but as the architects of tomorrow, I said into the microphone. My voice echoed through the stadium, bouncing off the rafters where thousands of parents sat fanning themselves with programs. I paused for effect, just like I had practiced. In that silence, I made the mistake of looking down at the front row. There were 4 seats reserved in the center of row A. They had little white signs taped to the velvet cushions that read, "Reserved for the family of Millie Green." They were empty. Every other seat in the front row was filled with proud fathers holding cameras and mothers wiping away tears. But my 4 seats were empty. They looked like missing teeth in a perfect smile. My mother, Tracy, my father, Mark, my sister, Kelsey, they were not there. I felt a sharp, jagged spike of humiliation in my chest, but I swallowed it down. I was used to this. I was the independent one, the one who could handle it. That was the family motto. Millie can handle it. We owe this success to the support systems that held us up, I continued, forcing the words out. The lie tasted sour on my tongue. To the families who... That was when the sound went out. It did not happen all at once. It started as a high-pitched whine in my left ear, like an old television set left on in an empty room. Then the whine grew into a roar, like a jet engine taking off inside my skull. I gripped the sides of the wooden podium. My knuckles turned white. Suddenly, the stadium lights seemed to stretch. The bright white beams smeared across my vision like wet paint on a canvas. The faces in the crowd dissolved into a terrifying impressionist painting of blurred skin and colors. I tried to say the next word in my speech, but my tongue felt too large for my mouth. Breathe, Millie. I told myself, it is just stress. It is just the heat. Do not ruin this. I tried to inhale, but the air felt thin, as if the stadium had suddenly been depressurized. My left hand, which was gripping the microphone stand, went numb. The sensation traveled up my arm with terrifying speed, extinguishing the feeling in my nerves like lights being switched off in a hallway. The microphone slipped. I tried to catch it, but my hand was no longer obeying my commands. Thud. The sound of the microphone hitting the floor was amplified 10,000 times by the speakers. It sounded like a gunshot. A gasp rippled through the crowd. 5,000 people inhaled at once. I looked out at them, or tried to. The world tilted violently to the right. The floor rushed up to meet me. I did not have the reflex to put my hands out. I simply fell. My shoulder hit the hard wood of the stage, followed by the side of my head. The pain was immediate and blinding, a supernova exploding behind my eyes. Millie! I heard my name, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater. Then came the screaming. It started in the front row and rolled backward like a wave. Oh my God! She collapsed. Somebody help her. Call 911. Get a medic. I was lying on my side, staring at the polished grain of the stage floor. I could see a scuff mark on the wood right in front of my nose. It was strange what the brain focused on when it was shutting down. I wanted to move, to stand up, to apologize for making a scene, but my body was a stone statue. Footsteps thundered toward me. The vibrations rattled through my skull, making the pain spike with every impact. Hands were on me, rough, frantic hands. Roll her over. Careful of the head. Is she breathing? Millie, can you hear me? Sweetheart? I tried to answer. I tried to say, I am fine. Just give me a second. But all that came out was a wet, choking sound. Darkness began to creep in from the edges of my vision. A black vignette closing in on a camera lens. The last thing I saw before the blackness took me completely was the empty chair in the front row where my mother should have been sitting. The world returned in flashes of sensory overload. Siren, a wailing, rhythmic scream that tore through the fog in my mind. Red light, pulsing against my closed eyelids, the smell of antiseptic and diesel fumes. I was moving. No, I was being moved. The vibration of the road beneath wheels traveled up through the stretcher and into my spine. BP is dropping, 100/60, pulse is erratic. We have got some serious tachycardia here. Millie, stay with us. Open your eyes. I forced my eyelids apart. The interior of the ambulance was blindingly bright. A woman in a navy blue uniform was hovering over me, her face tight with focus. She was adjusting an IV line in my arm. There she is, the woman said. Millie, my name is Sarah. You are in an ambulance. You had a seizure on stage. We are taking you to St. Alder Medical Center. Seizure. The word floated in the air, heavy and terrifying. We need to contact your family, Sarah said, her voice urgent. Is there a phone unlocked? Who is your next of kin? I tried to speak, but an oxygen mask was strapped to my face. I moved my uninjured hand weakly toward the pocket of my gown, which they had cut open to place electrodes on my chest. My phone. Sarah found it. She held it up. Mom? Dad? I nodded, the motion sending a fresh wave of nausea through my stomach. Sarah tapped the screen. She put it on speaker so she could keep working on my IV. Ring, 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 ring. The sound was agonizingly loud in the small metal box of the ambulance. Hi, you have reached Tracy and Mark, my mother's voice chirped from the voicemail recording. It was her happy voice, the one she used for clients and church friends. We are currently unavailable. Leave a message. Beep. This is St. Alder Emergency Services, Sarah said, her voice professional but clipped. We are transporting your daughter, Millie Green, to the hospital. She has collapsed and is in critical condition. Please call us immediately. She hung up and dialed again. Ring, ring, ring. Come on, Sarah muttered. Pick up. Ring, ring, voicemail again. Try the sister, the driver called out from the front. Check contacts for Kelsey. Sarah scrolled and dialed. Ring, ring, ring. Hey, it is Kelsey. I am probably busy planning the wedding of the century, so text me. Sarah swore under her breath. She looked at me, and for a second, the professional mask slipped. I saw pity in her eyes. I hated it. I hated that pity more than the pain in my head. Is there anyone else, Millie? Sarah asked gently. Anyone at all? I closed my eyes. Tears leaked out and ran into the plastic of the oxygen mask. They are not answering. I thought, I am dying in the back of an ambulance on my graduation day, and they are screening their calls. Grandpa, I whispered. The word fogged up the plastic. Ray, the emergency room at St. Alder Medical Center was a chaotic symphony of beeping monitors and squeaking rubber shoes. Trauma 1, female, 23, possible AVM rupture, history of sudden collapse, seizure activity observed. I was transferred from the stretcher to a hospital bed. The movement made the world spin again. Doctors swarmed around me like white-coated hornets. Let's get a CT scan. Stat. Check pupils. A light shone into my eyes. Left pupil sluggish, right pupil blown. We need to move fast. The urgency in their voices told me everything I needed to know. This was not dehydration. This was not stress. This was something inside my brain. A ticking time bomb that had finally gone off. We need consent for the angiogram and possible intervention. A tall doctor with gray hair barked. Where is the family? Parents are not picking up, Sarah the paramedic said. She was lingering by the door, unwilling to leave yet. We tried 3 times. I need a next of kin, the doctor said, frustration edging his tone. I cannot operate without consent if she is falling in and out of consciousness. We are losing time. I am here. The voice came from the hallway, ragged and desperate, a commotion at the door. A nurse tried to block the way, but a figure pushed past. It was Grandpa Ray. He looked like he had run all the way from the bus stop. He was wearing his old charcoal suit, the one he had bought 20 years ago for Grandma's funeral. It was shiny at the elbows and slightly too big for his shrinking frame. His tie was crooked, his chest was heaving, his breath coming in wheezing gasps. I am her grandfather, Ray choked out, holding up a trembling hand. Ray Green, I am here. The doctor turned. Are you the legal next of kin? Parents? Parents are unavailable, Ray said. His voice started weak, but hardened on the word unavailable. He walked to the side of my bed. He grabbed my cold hand in his warm, calloused ones. I am here for her. I will sign whatever you need. She is 23, but her mental state is compromising her ability to consent, the doctor said quickly, thrusting a clipboard at Ray. We suspect a bleed. We need to go in now. Ray did not hesitate. He did not ask about the cost. He did not ask for a second opinion. He snatched the pen and scribbled his signature on the line. Save her, Ray said. It was not a request. It was a command born of terrified love. As the nurses began to unlock the wheels of my bed to rush me to radiology, Ray stayed by my side, jogging to keep up. I am here, Millybug, he whispered, using the nickname he hadn't used since I was 6. Grandpa is here. You are not alone. He glanced down at the counter where the nurse had placed my personal effects. My phone was sitting there, face up, just as they were about to push me through the double doors. The screen lit up. It was not a call. It was a notification. The bright banner cut through the dim lighting of the hallway. I turned my head, fighting the stiffness in my neck, and my eyes locked onto the screen. My vision was blurry, but I could read the bold text. Credit alert. New account opened. Bank of America. Platinum loan. Amount $50,000. Time seemed to freeze. I lay there, my brain bleeding, my life hanging by a thread, staring at a notification telling me that someone had just used my social security number to take out a loan worth $50,000. Ray saw it too. He stopped moving. The nurses urged him to let go of the bed, but his hand was frozen on the rail. He stared at the phone screen. I watched his face. I expected confusion. I expected him to ask what that meant, but I did not see confusion. I saw recognition. His face, flushed from running, suddenly drained of color, his jaw set hard, the muscles jumping under the loose skin of his cheek. His eyes narrowed, shifting from the phone to my face. There was a terrible, dawning realization in his expression, a knowledge that was too heavy for an old man to carry. He looked at the phone, then at the empty corridor where my parents should have been running to save me. The nurses pushed the bed forward, breaking his grip. We have to go, sir. As I was wheeled away, the distance between us growing rapidly, I saw Ray standing alone under the harsh fluorescent lights. He looked down at the phone one last time, then back at me. His lips moved. I could not hear him over the noise of the hospital and the rushing blood in my ears, but I read his lips perfectly. Not the first time they have done this. Then the double doors swung shut, cutting him off from view, and I was plunged into the cold, sterile belly of the machine, alone with the truth that hurt far more than the hemorrhage in my brain. 6 weeks before the lights went out in the auditorium, I was standing in the kitchen of my parents' house in Savannah, trying to find a clear spot on the counter to set down my car keys. The granite island, usually the centerpiece of the room, had been colonized by the wedding industrial complex. It was buried under mountains of fabric swatches, floral magazines, and cardstock samples. There were ribbons in 5 different shades of cream and ivory, distinguished only by names like Whisper and Starlight, though they all looked like overpriced napkins to me. My mother, Tracy, was standing over the chaos like a general reviewing a battlefield map. She had a glass of Chardonnay in one hand and a glue stick in the other. My sister, Kelsey, sat on a bar stool, scrolling through Pinterest on her tablet with the intensity of a diamond cutter. "Millie, do not put your keys there," Mom said without looking up. "That is the mood board for the rehearsal dinner. Be careful." I picked my keys back up. My feet throbbed. I had just finished a 9-hour shift at Cedar and Cream Cafe, followed immediately by a 2-hour study session for my macroeconomics final. I smelled like stale espresso and sanitizer. My bank account balance was hovering in the double digits, and my tuition payment for the final semester had just cleared, leaving me with exactly enough money to buy peanut butter and bread for the next 2 weeks. "Hey to you too, Mom," I said, leaning against the refrigerator. "Work was great. Thanks for asking. Dean's list is still secure. Thanks for asking about that, too." Kelsey spun around on her stool. "Do not start with the sarcasm. Millie, we are in a crisis. The florist just told us that white hydrangeas might be out of season in June. Can you imagine? What are we supposed to do? Use carnations like poor people?" I rubbed my temples. "I am sure you will survive. Kels." "Easy for you to say," Kelsey snapped. "You do not care about aesthetics." I walked over to the sink to get a glass of water. As I passed the table, I saw a spreadsheet open on Mom's laptop. It was the budget for the wedding. I saw numbers that made my stomach turn. $5,000 for the venue deposit, $3,000 for the dress, $2,000 for the photographer, and then a line item that simply said, "Miscellaneous pampering," with a figure of $1,500 next to it. I froze. $1,500. That was exactly the amount I was short for the deposit on an apartment I wanted to rent after graduation. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I actually wanted to talk to you guys about something. Graduation is coming up." Mom sighed, finally peeling her eyes away from the ribbon samples. "We know, Millie, May 25th. It is on the calendar." "Right," I said. "Well, there are some costs associated with it. The cap and gown rental, the honor cords, and I need a decent dress to wear under the gown for the ceremony and the dinner after. I was wondering if you could help me out. It would be about $300 total." $300, compared to the numbers on that spreadsheet. It was a rounding error. It was less than the cost of the appetizers they were planning to serve at Kelsey's engagement party. The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed, rattling slightly in the vent above the microwave. Mom set down her glue stick. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and disappointment. The same look she used when I forgot to separate the recycling. "Oh, honey," she said softly, "you know things are tight right now with the wedding coming up. We are stretching every penny to give Kelsey her special day." I pointed at the screen. "You have $1,500 allocated for pampering. I am asking for $300 so I do not have to wear my work uniform under my graduation gown." "That money is for the bridal spa weekend," Kelsey interjected, defensive. "It is essential for my stress levels. You have no idea how stressful being a bride is." "I work 40 hours a week and take 18 credits, I said, my voice rising. "I think I know what stress is." "Millie," Mom said, her voice sharpening into a warning. "Stop it. Do not be jealous. We have discussed this. You are the smart one. You are the capable one." She walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. It was meant to be comforting, but it felt like a shackle. "You have always been so independent," Mom said. "Since you were a little girl. You never needed us the way Kelsey did. You figure things out. That is your gift. You can handle this on your own. You always do." There it was. The sentence that sounded like a compliment but felt like a dismissal. "You are independent" was code for, "We do not need to worry about you, so we won't." It was the excuse they used to absolve themselves of parental duty, because I was strong. I did not deserve support, because I did not cry and stomp my feet. I did not get the resources. "I am independent because I have to be," I said quietly. "Not because I want to be." "See?" Mom smiled, patting my cheek. You are doing great. Now, be a dear and move those boxes of invitations to the living room. My back is killing me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to sweep the ribbons and the mood board onto the floor, but I didn't. I was Millie. I was the reliable one. I swallowed the lump in my throat, picked up the heavy box of invitations, and carried them to the living room. Later that evening, my father, Mark, came home. He walked through the back door, loosening his tie, his eyes scanning the room for the path of least resistance. He saw the wedding chaos in the kitchen and immediately pulled out his phone, pretending to check an email. "Hey, Dad," I said. I was sitting at the dining table, trying to highlight a textbook, though the highlighter was running dry. "Hey, kiddo," he muttered, not looking up. "Long day, mergers and acquisitions. You know how it is." "I got a job offer today," I said. That made him pause. He looked up, blinking. "A job? At the coffee shop?" "No," I said. "A real job. For after graduation, I got offered a position teaching history at North Central High. It is the district with the best benefits in the state. They want me to start in August. This was huge news. This was the goal I had been working toward for 4 years. It was a secure salaried position with a pension plan." "Oh," Dad said. That is nice. Millie, teaching, good. Steady work?" "It is my dream job, Dad." Right, he said, his eyes already drifting back to the kitchen where Mom was laughing about something with Kelsey. "Have you told your mother?" "I tried. She is busy with the ribbons." "Well, you know how she gets," Dad said, giving me a conspiratorial grimace that was supposed to make us allies. "Best not to rock the boat right now. Kelsey is high maintenance, and if Mom is happy, we are all safe, right?" He patted my shoulder, 2 quick, awkward taps, and walked into the kitchen to pour himself a drink. "So, how are the plans coming, ladies?" I heard him ask, his voice booming with false cheer. I closed my textbook. The yellow ink on the page looked like a stain. I retreated to my bedroom, the only place in the house where the air did not feel thick with favoritism. I sat on my bed and pulled up my laptop, initiating a video call. The screen buffered for a moment, pixelating into gray squares, before resolving into the wrinkled, kind face of Grandpa Ray. He was sitting in his armchair in his small apartment 3 towns over. The lighting was bad, casting long shadows across his face, but his eyes were bright. "There is my scholar," Ray said, his voice raspy from decades of smoking before he quit. "How is the valedictorian holding up? Eating enough? You look thin." "Millibug." "I am fine, Grandpa." I lied. "Just tired." "Don't give me that," Ray said. He leaned closer to the camera. "I saw the dark circles under your eyes last week, and they are darker today. Are you sleeping? Or are you letting that coffee shop run you into the ground?" "I have to work. Grandpa, rent is due." Ray frowned. "And your parents? They helping with the graduation costs?" I looked away. "They are focused on Kelsey's wedding. It is an expensive time." Ray let out a noise that was halfway between a grunt and a growl. "Expensive time. That is what they call it. I call it playing favorites. It is not right. Millie, I have told Mark it is not right." "It is okay," I said, falling back into the script. "I can handle it." "Stop saying that," Ray snapped gently. "You shouldn't have to handle everything. You are 23 years old. You should be celebrating." He shifted in his chair, reaching for something off-screen. "Listen to me. I spoke to my lawyer friend yesterday. Everything is set for the day. You know your grandmother Vivian left something for you." "Grandpa, please," I said. "I do not need money. I just want you there." "It is not about need," Ray said. "It is about what is yours. Vivian saw things. Millie, she saw how they treated you even when you were little. She wanted to make sure you had a parachute. I have the envelope. I am only allowed to give it to you once you have that diploma in your hand. That was her rule." "When she crosses the finish line," Vivian said. "Not a moment before, or they will try to take it. I smiled weakly. I assumed it was a savings bond or maybe some of her old jewelry. I will be waiting, I said. I practiced the speech again. Let me hear the opening, Ray commanded. I took a deep breath and recited the first paragraph of my valedictorian address for him. I spoke about resilience and the future. Ray listened with his eyes closed, nodding along to the rhythm of the words. When I finished, he wiped his eye with a thumb. Beautiful, he said. They are going to stand up and cheer. Millie, and I will be right there in the front row. I bought a new tie. It is blue, matches your eyes. I love you, Grandpa. Love you too, kid. Get some sleep, and eat a banana. Potassium helps the brain. We hung up. I felt a little lighter, anchored by the knowledge that at least one person in my bloodline actually saw me. I opened my laptop to start working on my final paper for ethics class. I was 3 sentences in when my bedroom door burst open without a knock. Kelsey stood there. She was holding a clipboard and a car key. Millie, I need a favor, she said. It was not a question. I am studying. Kelsey. This will only take an hour, she said, tossing the keys onto my bed. I need you to drive to the bakery in West Savannah and pick up the sample cake box. They close in 45 minutes, so you have to hurry. And on the way back, stop at the printer and pick up the proofs for the programs. Why can't you go? I asked. You are just looking at Pinterest. I have a Zoom consultation with the makeup artist in 10 minutes, Kelsey said, rolling her eyes. Priorities, Millie. Besides, you are going out anyway to your shift later, right? It is practically on the way. It is 10 miles in the opposite direction. God, why do you have to be so difficult? Kelsey huffed. Mom is paying for your gas, isn't she? She wasn't. I paid for my own gas. I paid for my own insurance, but arguing with Kelsey was like arguing with a thunderstorm. It just exhausted you, and you still got wet. Fine, I said, closing my laptop. I will go. Great, she said, already turning to leave. Oh, and check the icing. If they used buttercream instead of fondant, make them redo it. I am not having a melting cake. She slammed the door. I sat there for a moment, staring at the wood grain. The injustice of it burned in my chest. A hot, acidic feeling. I was about to graduate at the top of my class. I had secured a career, and I was being treated like a TaskRabbit for a wedding that I could barely afford to attend as a guest. I stood up and grabbed the keys. I needed water before I left. I walked down the hallway, my socks silent on the carpet. As I approached the kitchen, I heard my mother's voice. She was on the phone, probably with one of her friends or a relative. I stopped just outside the doorframe. Oh, I know. It is going to be stunning, Mom was saying. Kelsey looks like a princess. We are putting everything we have into this. It is the social event of the season. There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. Then Mom laughed. It was a dismissive, airy sound. Millie's graduation? Oh, yeah. That is happening the week before the cruise. Honestly, it is just a ceremony. You know how boring those things are. We are not making a big deal out of it. Another pause. No, we aren't throwing her a party, Mom said. Her voice dropped slightly, becoming conspiratorial. To be honest, we can't afford 2 big events. And Millie, well, she doesn't care about that stuff. She is a grinder. She will get her diploma and go to work. She can handle herself. She always has. I stood in the hallway, my hand hovering over the light switch. The words hit me harder than a physical blow. She doesn't care. We aren't making a big deal out of it. It wasn't just that they weren't helping. It was that they had actively decided my achievements were not worth celebrating because they assumed I was too strong to be hurt by their neglect. They were punishing me for my competence. I turned around and walked back to my room, leaving the kitchen dark. I picked up the car keys Kelsey had thrown at me. I would get the cake. I would pick up the proofs. I would play my part. But as I walked out to the car, blinking back hot tears, I made a promise to myself. I would handle it, just like they said. But when I was finally done handling it, when I finally stood on my own 2 feet, They would realize that pushing someone away works both ways. Once I was gone, I would be gone for good. I didn't know then that my body would break before my resolve did. I didn't know that in 6 weeks. I wouldn't be driving a car. I would be riding in an ambulance, and the silence from my phone would be louder than any words my mother had just spoken. The headaches did not arrive like a guest knocking at the front door. They invaded like a squatter who refused to leave. 2 weeks after the incident in the kitchen, the pain settled behind my right eye. It was a rhythmic, thumping pressure, as if a tiny, angry fist was beating against the inside of my skull. I told myself it was dehydration. I told myself it was the lack of sleep. I told myself it was the sheer, unadulterated stress of finishing my honors thesis while working 30 hours a week. Just stress, I whispered to myself in the mirror of the employee restroom at Cedar and Cream. Just push through. I splashed cold water on my face. When I looked up, a drop of bright red blood was tracking from my left nostril down to my lip. I wiped it away quickly, jamming a wad of rough brown paper towel against my nose. It was the 3rd nosebleed that week. "Millie, you in there?" It was Tessa Hart, my best friend and coworker. She was the only person in the world, besides Grandpa Ray, who actually looked at me and saw a human being rather than a utility. I threw the bloody paper towel into the trash and unlocked the door. "Yeah, just washing up." Tessa was leaning against the counter, her apron dusted with flour. She took one look at me and her expression hardened. She reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was warm, grounding. "You are shaking," she said. I looked down at my hand. She was right. My fingers were vibrating with a fine, uncontrollable tremor. "Too much caffeine," I lied. "I had a triple shot before my shift." "Millie, look at me," Tessa commanded. She pulled me under the harsh fluorescent light of the prep area. "You have lost weight. Your collarbones are poking out like coat hangers. You are pale. You are shaking. And I saw you zoning out at the register earlier for a full minute while that customer was yelling about oat milk." "I am fine." "Tess, really." "You are not fine," she countered. "You need to see a doctor. Today, I can cover the rest of your shift. Go to urgent care." I pulled my hand away, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack the skin on my face. "I can't. Not today. I have the fitting for Kelsey's engagement party dress. And then I have to go over to the house to help set up the favors. If I bail, Mom will kill me." Tessa groaned, throwing her hands up. "The engagement party, of course. Because God forbid the princess has to tie her own ribbons. Millie, your health is more important than Kelsey's party." "It is just until graduation," I said, repeating the mantra that had kept me going for months. "Once I graduate, I am out. I just need to survive the next 4 weeks." Tessa looked at me with deep, sad resignation. "Just promise me you will eat something real? Not just a muffin from the display case?" "I promise," I said. I broke that promise 2 hours later. The bridal boutique was a temple of white tulle and pretension. The air smelled of expensive perfume and judgment. Kelsey was standing on a velvet pedestal, surrounded by mirrors, wearing a silk gown that cost more than my entire year's tuition. My mother sat on a plush beige sofa, sipping champagne provided by the boutique. I sat on a small, hard stool in the corner, holding Kelsey's purse, her phone, her car keys, and a bottle of water she had demanded I hold but had not taken a sip of. "It is tight in the waist," Kelsey complained, pinching the fabric. I told them I was a size 2. "This feels like a 4 they took in wrong." "You look stunning, baby," Mom cooed. "Doesn't she look stunning, Millie?" I looked up. The lights in the room seemed to flare, a sudden halo effect around Kelsey's head that made me squint. The thumping behind my eyes spiked. "Beautiful," I said softly. Kelsey turned to look at me in the mirror. Her eyes swept over my work uniform, jeans and a black t-shirt stained with coffee grounds. She smirked. "Well, enjoy the view," Kelsey said. "It is the closest you will get to a dress like this on a teacher's salary." The bridesmaids, 3 girls named Ashley, Brittany, and Courtney, who had been clones of Kelsey since high school, giggled into their champagne flutes. "Hey, teachers do okay," Brittany said with mock sympathy. "My aunt is a teacher. She drives a Honda." "I am going to be the valedictorian," I said. The words came out defensive, weak. "I have a contract with the district." Kelsey laughed. It was a sharp, tinkling sound. "Valedictorian. That is cute. Millie? Really? But let's be real. Valedictorian is just a fancy word for someone who is good at following rules. In the real world, nobody cares about your GPA. They care about who you know and what you have." She gestured to the dress, to the boutique, to the life she was being handed. "This is the real world." The room spun. It wasn't a metaphor. The room literally rotated 10 degrees to the left. A wave of nausea rolled through me so violently I had to clap a hand over my mouth. "I need the restroom," I gasped. I didn't wait for permission. I dropped Kelsey's purse on the floor and bolted for the back hallway. I barely made it into the stall before my knees gave out. I didn't vomit, but I dry heaved until my ribs ached. I sat on the cold tile floor, leaning my head against the metal partition. My heart was racing, a frantic, fluttering beat like a trapped bird. Thump, thump, thump. The headache was blinding now. I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes, trying to stop the flashing lights that were dancing in my peripheral vision. "Get up," I told myself. "Get up, or they will make fun of you." A sharp rap on the door made me jump. "Millie?" It was my mother's voice, not concerned, annoyed. "What are you doing in there? Kelsey needs her water. And we need you to carry the garment bags to the car. We are double parked." I closed my eyes. Tears squeezed out, hot and burning. I do not feel well." "Mom," I managed to say. "I think I need to sit down for a minute." "Oh, for heaven's sake." Mom sighed loud enough for me to hear through the door. "Do not be dramatic. Millie, you always do this when the attention isn't on you. Just wash your face and come out. We are leaving in 5 minutes." She walked away. The click-clack of her heels faded. I sat there for another minute, breathing through the pain, waiting for the room to stop tilting. When I finally emerged, pale and shaky, I found them waiting by the front desk. An older woman was standing near the entrance, browsing a rack of scarves. She had white hair pulled back in a severe bun and was wearing a tweed coat that looked decades old, but impeccably maintained. As I walked past her, carrying 3 heavy garment bags that cut into my shoulder, she caught my eye. She looked at my trembling hands. She looked at the sweat on my forehead. Then she looked at my mother and sister, who were laughing as they walked out the door, empty-handed. The woman took a step closer to me. "You are Ray Green's granddaughter, aren't you?" she asked quietly. I blinked, surprised. "Yes, I am Millie." The woman nodded. Her expression was grim. "I used to work with Ray at the shipyard. He talks about you. He says you have a backbone of steel." She reached out and steadied the bags on my shoulder. "Be careful with that backbone, dear," she whispered. "If you carry too much for people who do not appreciate it, even steel can snap. You deserve someone to carry the bags for you once in a while." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, a lump forming in my throat, and hurried out to the car where my mother was honking the horn. That night, after unloading the car, steaming the dresses, and helping address 200 envelopes for the engagement party invites, I drove to the 24-hour pharmacy. My head was still pounding, and the visual disturbances were getting worse. I kept seeing floaters, little black spots that drifted across my line of sight. I needed migraine medicine, the strong stuff that cost $20 a box. I walked down the aisle, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I grabbed a box of Excedrin and a bottle of Gatorade. I went to the self-checkout. I scanned the items. Total, $24.50. I swiped my debit card. Processing. Declined. I frowned. That couldn't be right. I had been paid 2 days ago. I knew exactly how much was in there. I had budgeted $400 for the month's expenses. I had only spent $50 on gas and groceries. I swiped it again. Declined. A line was forming behind me. A man in paint-stained overalls sighed loudly. "I am sorry," I muttered, my face burning with humiliation. "Just a second." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My hands were shaking so bad I mistyped my password twice. Finally, the dashboard loaded. Available balance: $2.14. My stomach dropped. I scrolled down to the transaction history. There, dated yesterday, was a pending transaction that sucked the air out of my lungs. Pending, VENDEPREFHOLD, $350. VENDEP. Venue deposit? I stared at the screen. I hadn't authorized this. I hadn't bought anything for $350. That was my food money. That was my electricity bill money. I put the medicine back on the shelf, muttering an apology to the cashier, and walked out to my car empty-handed. I drove home, not to my dorm, but to my parents' house. It was late, almost 11 at night, but the lights were still on. I walked into the living room. My dad was sitting in his recliner, watching sports highlights. Mom was asleep on the couch. "Dad," I said. My voice was tight. He looked up, startled. "Millie? I thought you went back to school." "I did. I came back. Dad, look at this." I shoved my phone in his face. $350 was taken out of my account yesterday. It says VENDEP. Do you know what this is? Dad squinted at the screen. He didn't look surprised. He looked shifty. He shifted his weight in the chair, scratching his chin. "Oh, that," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "That must be a glitch. I was paying the deposit for the engagement party venue yesterday online. The browser might have autofilled your card info from that time you bought the pizza for us last month." "Autofilled?" I asked, my voice rising. "Dad, the browser doesn't just autofill a debit card number and the CVV code. You have to type that in." "Time." "Technology is weird, Millie," he said, turning his attention back to the TV. "Don't make a federal case out of it. It is just a few $100. I will write you a check. Eventually, when my bonus clears next week. I need that money now. Dad, I have $2. I can't buy medicine. I can't buy food." "Don't be dramatic," he said, his voice hardening. "You can eat here. We have plenty of leftovers in the fridge. And stop stressing. That is why you have a headache. You are always so high-strung, just like your grandfather." "This is theft," I whispered. "It is family," Dad snapped. He stood up, towering over me. "It is a mistake, and we are family. We help each other. We are spending thousands on your sister's wedding, and you are crying over $300? Where is your gratitude? We put a roof over your head for 18 years. He was doing it again, twisting the reality until I felt like the villain. "I am deleting my card from your computer," I said, backing away. "Fine. Do whatever you want. Just keep it down. Your mother is sleeping." He sat back down and turned up the volume on the TV. I walked out of the house. I felt hollowed out. It wasn't just the money. It was the ease with which he took it, like it was his right, like I was just a resource to be mined. I sat in my car in the driveway, staring at the dark windows of the house. My head throbbed. Ding. A text message from Tessa. I picked up the phone, expecting a check-in about the migraine. It was a screenshot. "Tessa. Millie. Call me. Now. My cousin works in admin at the credit union. She just flagged something weird." Tessa. "Someone used your university email address to inquire about a student consolidation loan, but the IP address isn't from the campus library." I zoomed in on the screenshot she sent. It was a log of an inquiry. Applicant email. M.Green, 23 Lakeview, ... Edu IP. Location. Residential. 42. Oak Creek Drive. I stopped breathing. 42 Oak Creek Drive, that was my parents' address. They weren't just accidentally using my card. They were actively using my identity to apply for loans. I looked up at the house. The blue light of the television flickered in the living room window. My father was in there, watching baseball. having just told me I was dramatic for worrying about $300, while he was secretly trying to leverage my credit score to fund a wedding I wasn't even wanted at. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my leather cover squeaked. The pain in my head spiked to a new, agonizing level. But for the first time, the anger was stronger than the pain. Grandpa Ray was right. They weren't just neglectful. They were predators. And I was the prey. I put the car in reverse. I didn't go back inside to confront them. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed to survive until graduation. And then, I needed to make sure that when I cut the cord, I didn't just walk away. I took the scissors with me. The countdown to graduation had become a physical weight, a ticking clock that synchronized with the throbbing in my temples. 7 days. I just had to survive 7 more days. The atmosphere in the Green household had shifted from chaotic to conspiratorial. There were whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. There were closed laptops and sudden changes of subject. I assumed it was about the wedding. I assumed they were planning some surprise for Kelsey. A bridal shower, a getaway, another $1,500 pampering session. I was wrong. They weren't planning a surprise for Kelsey. They were planning an exit strategy. It happened on a Tuesday night, exactly 1 week before the ceremony. I had just come home from a double shift. My feet were swollen, and the visual disturbances, those terrifying little flashes of light at the corners of my eyes, were back. I walked into the kitchen hoping to find a leftover slice of pizza. But instead, I found a family meeting in progress. Mom, Dad, and Kelsey were gathered around the kitchen island. The mood was electric, buzzing with an excitement I hadn't seen since Kelsey got engaged. A glossy brochure lay open in the center of the table. "Oh, Millie, you are home," Mom said. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were glued to the brochure. "Perfect timing. We have some news." I put my bag down, leaning against the counter to take the weight off my bad ankle. "What news? Did the hydrangeas come back in stock?" "Better," Kelsey squealed. She actually clapped her hands. "Mom and Dad found a way to fix my stress. We are going away." I blinked, my brain moving sluggishly through the fog of exhaustion. "Going away, like a weekend trip?" "A cruise," Mom announced, beaming. She tapped the brochure with a manicured fingernail. "The Caribbean Escape Package, 7 days of sun, spa treatments, and unlimited cocktails. It is exactly what Kelsey needs to reset before the final wedding prep month. And the best part? It was a last-minute deal. 50% off if we book today." "That sounds nice," I said, trying to muster some enthusiasm. "When do you leave in June?" The kitchen went quiet. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, loaded with a truth they didn't want to say out loud. Dad picked up his water glass and took a long, slow sip, avoiding my gaze. Kelsey looked at her nails. Mom cleared her throat. "Well, that is the thing about last-minute deals. Millie, you have to take the dates they give you. The ship sails this Friday." I froze. I did the math in my head. Friday. That was in 3 days. "Friday," I repeated. "And it is a 7-day cruise?" "Yes," Mom said, her voice breezy, forced. "We will be back the following Friday afternoon." "Mom," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "My graduation is on Saturday. This Saturday, the 25th. I know, Mom said quickly, waving a hand as if swatting away a fly. We looked at the calendar, but this deal was just too good to pass up. Honey, and Kelsey has been on the verge of a breakdown. You have seen her." I looked at Kelsey. She looked perfectly fine. She looked radiant, actually, fueled by the attention and the promise of a tan. "So," I started, my chest tightening. "You are not going to be there?" "We will be there in spirit," Dad chimed in, finally speaking up. His voice was hearty, the fake cheer of a salesman trying to close a bad deal. "And hey, in this day and age, technology is amazing. We will have them live stream it, or you can get a video recording. We will watch it together as a family when we get back. We will make a pizza night out of it." "A pizza night?" I repeated flatly. It is just a ceremony, Millie, Kelsey added, rolling her eyes. It is sitting in a hot gym for 3 hours listening to boring speeches. You are not missing much. Honestly, we are doing you a favor by not making a fuss. I am the speaker, I said. My voice shook. I am the valedictorian. I am giving the speech. I am not listening to boring speeches. Kelsey, I am giving the one that everyone has to listen to. And you are going to be great, Mom said, standing up and moving toward the fridge. You have always been good at talking. But look, we have to prioritize. Kelsey is the bride. This is her moment. You know how fragile she is right now. Fragile? I laughed. It was a dry, broken sound. She is getting a $40,000 wedding. She is getting a cruise. I am asking for 2 hours of your time. Don't start, Dad warned, his finger wagging. Don't start with the victim complex. Millie, we support you. We paid for your… well, we let you live here. You let me live here? I stepped forward, the anger finally piercing through the migraine. I pay rent. Dad, I buy my own food. And apparently, someone in this house is using my identity to apply for loans, so I think I have paid my way. The room went dead silent. Dad's face turned a shade of gray. He glanced at Mom. What are you talking about? Mom asked, her voice shrill. Loans? You are talking crazy, see? This is why we can't take you. You are too high-strung. You would ruin the vibe of the trip. I don't want to go on your trip, I shouted. The volume surprised even me. I want my parents to watch me graduate. I want someone to be proud of me for once. We are proud, Dad yelled back, slamming his hand on the table. But we are not going to sacrifice Kelsey's mental health because you need an audience. You are strong. Millie, you have always been the strong one. You don't need us holding your hand. I am not a machine, I screamed. I am not a robot that you can just plug in when you need money and unplug when you want to have fun. I am your daughter. You are being incredibly selfish, Kelsey hissed. She stood up, smoothing her shirt. This is my pre-wedding moon, and you are trying to make it about your grades. Classic Millie, always trying to prove you are smarter than everyone else. It is not about smarts, Kelsey. It is about showing up. Enough, Mom snapped. The tickets are booked. Non-refundable. We are leaving Friday morning. You will have the house to yourself. You can study in peace. That is what you like, isn't it? Peace and quiet. She turned her back on me. Mark, did you print the luggage tags? Yeah, Dad muttered. They are in the office. They went back to their discussion. Just like that. They turned off the conflict and turned back to the cruise. They erased me from the room. I stood there for a moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I looked at the back of my father's head. I looked at my mother's hands smoothing the brochure. I looked at Kelsey's smug little smile. I realized then that it wasn't a choice between the cruise and me. It was a choice between a version of reality where I mattered and a version where I didn't. They had chosen their reality long ago. I turned around and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't stomp. I just walked out into the humid Georgia night. I got into my car, my sanctuary. I drove to the end of the block and parked under a street lamp. My hands were shaking so hard, I couldn't get the key out of the ignition. I dialed the number. Hello? The voice was gruff, sleepy. It was late. Grandpa? I choked out. Millie? The sleep vanished from Ray's voice instantly. What is wrong? Are you hurt? Is it the head? They are leaving, I sobbed. I couldn't hold it back anymore. The dam broke. They are going on a cruise. Grandpa, on Saturday, during the ceremony. They are not coming. There was silence on the other end of the line. A long, heavy silence. They… What? Ray asked. His voice was dangerously quiet. A Caribbean cruise, I wept. For Kelsey. Because she is stressed. They said I am strong. They said I can handle it. They said they would watch the video. I heard Ray inhale sharply. I heard the sound of him shifting in his chair. The creak of old wood. Listen to me. Millie, Ray said. His voice was no longer the gentle grandfather tone. It was the voice of a man who had welded steel for 40 years. It was hard and cold. "Stop crying," I sniffled, wiping my nose on my sleeve. "I can't help it." "I know," he said, softening slightly. "But I need you to listen. I will be there. I will be in the front row. I will wear my best suit. I will cheer loud enough for 10 parents. You hear me?" "I hear you." "You are not alone. Kid, never." Ray paused. "Millie, I need you to answer a question for me, and I need you to think hard." "Okay. Have you signed anything recently? Anything your father gave you? A birthday card that looked like a check? A document for school? Anything?" "No," I said. "Nothing. Why?" "Because people who spend money they do not have on cruises usually have a source," Ray muttered. "And if they are skipping town right before you become a legal adult in the eyes of the professional world, it makes me nervous." "I haven't signed anything. Grandpa, I promise." "Good. Keep it that way. Don't sign a receipt for a pizza delivery if your father hands it to you. You understand?" "I understand. Now, go to sleep. Get out of that house if you have to. Stay with Tessa." "I will try." "Millie," Ray said, his voice dropping to a low rumble. "If they do this, if they leave you alone on that stage, there is no coming back from it. I have held my tongue for your grandmother's sake for a long time, but if they abandon you this weekend, they are going to lose something forever. And I am not talking about money." We hung up. I sat in the car for another 10 minutes, watching a moth beat its wings against the street lamp. Ray was right. I needed to protect myself. The loan inquiry, the venue deposit, the cruise, it was all connected. They viewed me as a resource, and now they were abandoning the resource because it was becoming inconvenient. I started the car and drove, not to Tessa's house, but to the university campus. The administration building was closed, but the 24-hour Student Services Center was open. I walked in. Flashing my ID to the security guard, I went to the computer kiosk. I logged into the student portal. I navigated to the Personal Information tab. I clicked on Emergency Contacts. Currently listed: primary, Mark Green, father; secondary, Tracy Green, mother. I hit the edit button. I deleted Mark Green. I deleted Tracy Green. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a second, I felt a pang of guilt. They were my parents. If I got hit by a bus, shouldn't they know? Then I remembered the brochure. Caribbean Escape. I typed in a new name. Primary contact: Ray Green, grandfather. Phone: 555-0199. I hesitated, then added a secondary. Secondary. Contact: Tessa Hart, friend. I hit save. The screen flashed green. Update successful. I stared at the screen. It felt like a legal decree. I had just fired my parents. I didn't know then how crucial that keystroke would be. I didn't know that in 5 days. Those names on the screen would be the difference between a family rushing to my side and a voicemail box full of indifference. I walked out of the student center. The night air felt a little cooler. The headache was still there, pounding away. But the panic had subsided into a cold, hard resolve. I drove back to the house. It was dark. They had gone to bed, dreaming of white sand beaches and cocktails. I walked past their bedroom door. I could hear my father snoring. I went to my room and packed a bag. Just the essentials: my graduation gown, my shoes, my laptop, and the envelope Grandpa Ray had mentioned. No, wait, he had the envelope. I packed my birth certificate and my Social Security card, taking them from the lockbox under my bed. If Ray was right, and they were desperate, I wasn't leaving anything valuable behind while they were gone. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house. "You are strong, Millie," they had said. "Watch me," I whispered to the dark. "Just watch me." The week blurred. I worked. I studied. I avoided the house as much as possible. Friday morning came. I woke up to the sound of suitcases being zipped. I stayed in my room. I didn't go out to say goodbye. I heard the taxi honk outside. Millie, Mom called from the hallway. We are leaving. Love you. Good luck tomorrow. Knock 'em dead, kiddo, Dad shouted. Don't forget to water the plants, Kelsey added. Then the front door slammed. The silence that followed was absolute. I walked to the window and watched the taxi pull away. They didn't look back. They were laughing in the back seat. I was alone in the house. I turned around and saw a note on my dresser. Dad must have slipped it in while I was in the shower. It was a $50 bill and a sticky note. For a celebratory dinner, don't spend it all in one place. Dad. I looked at the money. $50, the price of a cheap bottle of wine on a cruise ship. I tore the note in half and left the money on the dresser. My phone buzzed. It was Ray. Ray. I am picking up the suit from the cleaners. I will be at the arena at 8 sharp tomorrow. I will be the one cheering the loudest. I smiled, but tears pricked my eyes. Then, a sudden wave of dizziness hit me. I grabbed the dresser for support. The room tilted. The headache, which had been a dull roar all week, suddenly screamed. I sat down heavily on the bed. Tomorrow, I thought, just get through tomorrow. But as I sat there, clutching the edge of the mattress, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. Ray had said if they abandoned me, they would lose something forever. He didn't know how right he was, because as the pain in my head sharpened into a lance of pure agony, I had a feeling that the person who walked onto that stage tomorrow might not be the same person who walked off, if I walked off at all. The morning of my graduation did not start with a sunrise or a feeling of triumph. It started with the violent vibration of my phone against the nightstand, rattling my brain inside my skull like a marble in a tin can. I opened my eyes, and the light from the window felt like a physical assault. The headache that had been stalking me for weeks had evolved. It was no longer a throb. It was a high-pitched frequency, a scream that only I could hear, echoing behind my left ear. I reached for the phone, squinting against the brightness. I expected a good luck text, maybe a change of heart. Maybe my parents had turned the car around. Instead, I saw a photo. It was a group selfie. The background was the glistening white hull of a massive cruise ship, the Royal Caribbean Escape, in the foreground. My mother was wearing a floppy straw hat and oversized sunglasses, her teeth white and gleaming. My father had his arm around her, holding a tropical drink with a pink umbrella. Kelsey was in the middle, wearing a sash that said, Bride-to-be, sticking her tongue out playfully. The caption read, No obligations, just vibes. Bon voyage to us. #family time. #Kelsey's Bach. No obligations. I was the obligation. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. A wave of nausea rolled over me, so potent that I had to scramble out of bed and run to the bathroom. I fell to my knees in front of the toilet, but nothing came up except bile and the bitter taste of betrayal. My stomach was empty. I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. Millie? The voice came from the front door. It was Tessa. She had a key, a spare I had given her months ago, which was fortunate because I didn't think I could walk to the door to let her in. In here, I croaked. Tessa appeared in the bathroom doorway. She was wearing a nice dress for the ceremony, but her face fell the moment she saw me. She dropped her purse and knelt beside me, her hand instantly finding my forehead. You are burning up, she said, her voice tight with panic. Millie, you look gray. We are not going to this ceremony. We are going to the ER. No, I gasped, using the towel rack to pull myself up. The room spun wildly, colors smearing together. No ER. I have to speak. I am the valedictorian. If I don't go, they win. They will say I couldn't handle it. Who cares what they say? Tessa argued, trying to support my weight. You are sick. I am just stressed, I lied, though we both knew it was a lie. Get me some water, and maybe a bagel. I just need sugar. Tessa drove us to the Lakeview State University arena. I sat in the passenger seat with my eyes closed, clutching a plain bagel that felt like sandpaper in my mouth. I managed 2 bites before the nausea threatened to return. The arena was a cavernous beast of concrete and steel, already humming with the energy of 5,000 people. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of cheap perfume and floor wax. We went to the staging area. The gown, a heavy black synthetic fabric, felt like a lead apron used for x-rays. I pulled the cap onto my head, wincing as the elastic band put pressure on my temples. "I will be right there," Tessa said, squeezing my hand. "Section B, row 4. If you need anything, you signal me. Use the code word." "Pineapple," I whispered. It was our old joke. "Pineapple," she confirmed. She looked at me one last time, her eyes filled with a terrifying amount of worry, before disappearing into the crowd. I walked to the line of honor students. The noise was deafening. The band was warming up, a cacophony of brass and drums that sent spikes of pain shooting down my neck. We processed in, pomp and circumstance. The melody that was supposed to signify achievement sounded to me like a funeral dirge played at the wrong speed. I walked mechanically, placing one foot in front of the other, left, right. I reached the front row, the VIP section, and there he was. Grandpa Ray was sitting in the very first seat, right next to the aisle. He was wearing the suit he had promised, the charcoal one with the shiny elbows. But he had a new tie, a brilliant, electric blue that matched the school colors. He was holding a thick manila envelope in his lap with both hands, clutching it like a shield. When he saw me, his face lit up. He smiled, a genuine, crinkly-eyed smile that momentarily eased the vice grip around my skull. He gave me a thumbs up. I tried to smile back, but I think it came out as a grimace. I sat down in the chair marked valedictorian. The ceremony began. The dean spoke, the president spoke. Their voices were muffled, as if I were listening to them from the bottom of a swimming pool. My vision was starting to tunnel. The peripheral details, the crowd, the banners, were fading into a fuzzy gray static. Only the podium in the center of the stage remained sharp. "And now," the dean's voice boomed, "please welcome your class valedictorian, Miss Millie Green." The applause was a roar, a physical wave of sound. I stood up. My legs felt disconnected from my body, like I was operating them by remote control. I walked up the stairs to the stage. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. I reached the podium. I gripped the sides of the wood, my knuckles turning white. I looked out at the sea of faces, but I couldn't distinguish any of them. It was just a blur of skin tones and colors, except for the empty seats. My eyes, driven by some masochistic instinct, locked onto the 4 empty chairs in the front row next to Grandpa Ray. They seemed to glow with absence. I took a breath. The air tasted metallic. "Fellow graduates, faculty, and families," I began. My voice sounded strange, hollow and distant. "We stand here today, on the precipice of the future." I paused. The script in my head was fragmenting. The words were slipping away like water through fingers. We owe this success," I stammered. The high-pitched scream in my ear suddenly spiked to a volume that drowned out the room. Pop. It wasn't a sound in the room. It was a sound inside me, a wet, sickening pop behind my eyes, followed by a sensation of warm liquid flooding the base of my brain. The world didn't just spin. It shattered. The lights above me elongated into blinding streaks of white fire. The faces in the crowd melted. I tried to say, "I am sorry," but my mouth wouldn't form the words. My tongue was a dead weight. My right hand slipped from the podium. I tried to grab the microphone, but my fingers were numb. Thud. The microphone hit the floor. Gravity took over. My knees buckled. I didn't crumble. I fell like a tree, stiff and heavy. My shoulders struck the hardwood floor, but the pain was distant, irrelevant compared to the explosion inside my skull. "Millie!" The scream tore through the silence. It was Tessa. I was lying on my side. My cheek was pressed against the cold varnish of the stage. I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't move my left arm. I heard the thunder of footsteps. Someone was running up the stairs. "Call 911. Get a medic." Then, a face hovered over me. Not a doctor. It was Grandpa Ray. He had jumped the barrier. He was on his knees, his good suit pants scraping the floor. His hands were shaking as he touched my face. "I have got you, Millibug," he choked out. "I have got you. Stay with me." Then the blackness came. It wasn't sleep. It was a void. I drifted back into a world of chaos and speed. BP is 190/110. Pupils unequal. We are losing her. ETA 2 minutes. I was on a stretcher. The ceiling lights of a hospital corridor were flashing by like strobe lights. Zip, zip, zip. I couldn't feel my body. I was a floating consciousness trapped in a broken vessel. Trauma 1, let's go. I was transferred onto a hard bed. Hands were everywhere, cutting my gown, sticking needles into my arms, shining lights into my eyes. "We have a massive bleed," a doctor said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "It looks like an AVM rupture. We need to decompress immediately or she will herniate." "Consent?" a nurse shouted. "Do we have consent?" "Patient is non-responsive. We need next of kin." "Parents aren't answering," another voice said. It was the paramedic from earlier. "We tried 5 times. Straight to voicemail." "Try again," the doctor ordered. "I can't drill into a 23-year-old's skull without authorization unless she codes. Get them on the phone." I felt a warm hand on my arm. Grandpa Ray. "I am here," Ray said. "I am her grandfather." "Are you the legal guardian?" "No," Ray said. "Her father is—" "Get the father," the doctor barked. I heard the sound of a phone dialing. It was on speaker. Ray was holding it up. Ring, ring, ring. "Come on. Mark," Ray growled. "Pick up the damn phone." Click. "Hello?" It was my father's voice. But there was background noise, steel drums, laughter, the sound of a crowd. "Mark," Ray yelled. "It is Ray. You need to listen to me. Millie is in the hospital. She collapsed. She is having a brain hemorrhage." There was a pause on the line. Then, my father's voice came through, sounding annoyed and tinny. "Dad? Look, I can barely hear you. We are in the boarding queue. The signal is spotty. Did she faint?" "She probably just didn't eat." I told her she was too stressed. "She is not stressed, you idiot," Ray screamed. The entire trauma room went silent. "She is bleeding into her brain. The doctors need consent to operate, right now, or she dies." Whoa, calm down," Dad said. But he didn't sound scared. He sounded inconvenienced. "Operate? That sounds extreme. Maybe let her rest a bit? Look, we are literally handing over our passports right now. If I step out of line, we miss the boarding group." "Did you hear me?" Ray's voice broke. "She might die." "Dad, I can't handle this right now," Mark said. "Can you just sign whatever? You are family. I authorize you. Whatever. Just don't make this a whole thing. Kelsey is already crying because the luggage handler dropped her bag." In the background, I heard the blast of a ship's horn. Hoonk. "Mark, I have to go. Dad, the agent is waving us over. Just handle it. We will call when we get to Nassau." Click. The line went dead. The silence in the trauma room was heavier than the lead gown I had worn. The doctor looked at Ray. He looked at the phone. He looked at me. "Sir," the doctor said gently, "technically, verbal authorization over the phone is a gray area. But given the circumstances," Ray dropped the phone onto the side table next to the stretcher. He looked at the doctor. His eyes were hard, dry, and cold as ice. He said, "I authorize it," Ray said. "I am witnessing it. Do the surgery. Save my granddaughter." "Prep the OR," the doctor shouted. "Let's move." The bed started moving again. The wheels squeaked against the linoleum. Ray ran alongside for a few steps, but the nurses held him back. "You have to stay here." "Sir?" Ray stopped. He was breathing hard. He looked down at the side table where he had dropped his phone. My phone was there too. The paramedics had placed it there with my wallet. As they wheeled me away, fighting the darkness that was swallowing my vision, I saw Ray pick up my phone. It must have buzzed. He looked at the screen. I was fading fast. The anesthesia was entering my veins. A cold rush up my arm, but I saw his face one last time. He wasn't looking at a text message. He was staring at an email notification that had just lit up the screen, even through the blur. I knew what it was. I had seen the subject line earlier that morning in my spam folder, but ignored it. Subject: Congratulations. Your loan application is approved. Ray read it. I saw his lips move as he read the preview text. $50,000. Deposited to account ending in. He looked up. He looked at the doors where I was disappearing. Then he looked at the phone in his hand. And then at the exit where my father was probably stepping onto a gangway, clutching a tropical drink. The last thing I saw before the anesthesia took me was Grandpa Ray closing his fist around my phone, his knuckles turning white, his face transforming from grief into a terrifying, vengeful resolve. He didn't look like a grandfather anymore. He looked like a soldier going to war. Then the lights went out. Waking up was not like in the movies. There was no sudden gasp, no dramatic sitting up in bed with sweat on my brow. It was a slow, agonizing crawl out of a deep, black well. The first thing I registered was the sound. It was a rhythmic, mechanical beeping that seemed to be synced with the dull, throbbing pain in my skull. Beep, beep, beep. It was the soundtrack of survival. Cold and indifferent. I tried to swallow, but my throat felt like it had been scrubbed with steel wool. My mouth tasted of stale chemicals and old pennies. I tried to lift my head, but it was impossible. It felt like a bowling ball was taped to my neck, heavy and cumbersome. I realized then that my head was wrapped in thick layers of gauze. I blinked, my eyelids feeling like sandpaper against my eyes. The room was dim, lit only by the green and blue glow of the monitors stacked like towers around my bed. Water, I croaked. The word was barely a whisper. A puff of dry air. There was movement to my right. A chair scraped against the linoleum floor. She is awake. Oh, thank God. She is awake. It was Tessa. Her face hovered into my line of sight. She looked terrible, and I loved her for it. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, surrounded by dark circles that looked like bruises. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot that hadn't been touched in days. She was wearing the same dress she had worn to graduation, but now it was wrinkled and stained with coffee. She held a plastic cup with a straw to my lips. Slowly, Millie, just a sip. The water was warm, but it felt like liquid gold sliding down my throat. I drank greedily until she pulled the cup away. Easy, she whispered. You have been out for 3 days. You had surgery, a craniotomy. 3 days. The number floated in my mind, abstract and terrifying. I had lost 3 days of my life. I shifted my gaze to the other side of the bed. Grandpa Ray was there. He was slumped in an uncomfortable hospital recliner, his head resting awkwardly on his chest. He was still wearing his suit trousers and the white shirt, though the tie, the electric blue one, was draped over the arm of the chair. He was asleep, his breathing coming in soft, whistling snores. He looked smaller than I remembered, as if the last 3 days had physically shrunk him. He hasn't left, Tessa said softly, following my gaze. Not once. The nurses tried to make him go to the waiting room, but he threatened to handcuff himself to the bed rail. He slept in that chair for 72 hours. I felt a sting in my eyes, but I didn't have the energy to cry. I looked at Tessa. My parents? The room went quiet. The only sound was the monitor. Beep, beep. Tessa bit her lip. She looked away, focusing on smoothing the blanket over my legs. That was answer enough. Where are they? I asked. My voice was stronger this time. Hardened by a sudden, cold clarity, Tessa reached over to the bedside table and picked up my phone. It was plugged into a charger. You should see for yourself. I think you need to see it to understand. She unlocked it. She knew my passcode and navigated to Instagram. She handed the phone to me. The screen brightness hurt my eyes, but I forced myself to focus. The first image on my feed was from my mother's account. It had been posted 2 hours ago. It was a photo taken on the deck of a ship. The sky was a brilliant, saturating blue that contrasted sharply with the sterile gray of my hospital room. My mother was center frame, wearing a white sun hat and holding a glass of champagne. My father was behind her, laughing at something off camera, looking relaxed and tanned. Kelsey was next to them, wearing a bikini and a sheer cover-up, striking a pose that screamed carefree. They looked perfect. They looked happy. I read the caption, "Day 3 in paradise. Nothing but ocean breezes and good vibes. Sometimes you just have to disconnect to reconnect." Family vacation. Kelsey's Bach Blessed. I scrolled down. Another photo from yesterday. A picture of a lobster dinner. Caption, "Eating good tonight. Celebrating life." I scrolled again. A video of Kelsey dancing in a club on the ship, doing a shot of tequila with her bridesmaids who had apparently joined them. Caption, "No rules, no limits, just us." I lay there in the ICU, a drain tube coming out of my skull, my body broken, watching my family celebrate life while I fought for mine. I waited for the sadness to hit me. I waited for the heartbreak, for the sobbing that would make the machines alarm, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange, creeping coldness spread through my chest. It started in my heart and moved outward, freezing my veins. It was the absence of feeling. It was the death of expectation. For 23 years, I had been chasing their approval, begging for scraps of affection, making excuses for their neglect. I looked at that photo, at my father's laughing face, and I felt the switch flip. Click, the light went out. The Millie who wanted to please them died in that hospital bed. "They look like they are having fun," I said. My voice was flat, monotone. Tessa looked at me with concern. "Millie, it is okay to be angry. It is okay to scream." "I am not angry," I said. "I am done." The phone in my hand buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again, a rapid-fire series of vibrations that made my fingers numb. I looked at the notifications. 47 missed calls, 22 text messages. Most of them were from Dad and Mom, a few from Kelsey. I opened the text thread with my father. "Dad, yesterday, 4 p.m. Call me as soon as you get this." "Dad, yesterday, 6 p.m. Why is the hospital asking for insurance info? Call me." "Dad, today, 8 a.m. Millie, this is serious. Do not talk to anyone about the billing. I will handle it when I get back." "Dad, today, 10 a.m. Pick up the phone." "Mom, today, 11 a.m. We are worried sick. Why aren't you answering? Also, if the doctors ask about stress at home, tell them everything was fine. We don't need a social worker involved." "Kelsey, today noon. You are literally ruining my trip. Dad is on the phone constantly. Can you just text back and say you are alive?" I read them all. Not one of them asked, "How are you?" Not one of them said, "We love you." Not one of them said, "We are coming home." They were commands. They were damage control. They are not calling because they are worried about you. Millibug. I turned my head. Grandpa Ray was awake. He was watching me with eyes that looked ancient and sad. He sat up slowly, his joints popping, and rubbed his face with a hand that shook slightly. "I saw the texts," Ray said. His voice was gravelly. "I checked your phone while you were out. I had to make sure they hadn't done anything else." "They are worried about the bill," I whispered. "No," Ray said, shaking his head. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "They are worried about what you know, and they are worried about what you are going to say." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out the manila envelope he had been holding at the graduation. He placed it on the bed, next to my hand. "Your grandmother, Vivian," Ray began. "She knew your father better than anyone. She loved him because he was her son. But she didn't trust him. She saw how he was with money, always looking for the shortcut, always spending tomorrow's dollar today." Ray tapped the envelope. "When Vivian passed, she left the house to Mark. But she didn't leave him the cash. She put the liquid assets into a trust, the Vivian Promise Trust. She named me the trustee until you turned 23 and graduated from university. I stared at the envelope. A trust? It is not a fortune, Ray said, but it is enough. Enough to buy a house, enough to start a life, or, he paused, his jaw tightening, enough to pay off a lot of bad debts. They know about it? I asked. They know it exists, Ray said. They don't know the amount, and they don't know the terms. They thought they could bully you into signing it over once you got it. Or, more likely, they thought if they got you into enough debt beforehand, you would have to use the trust money to bail yourself out, and they would manage the cleanup, the loan application, the $50,000, the venue deposit. It all clicked into place like the tumblers of a lock. They were trying to max out my credit, I realized, the words tasting like ash. So when I got the inheritance, I would have to use it to pay off the loans they took in my name. Exactly, Ray said. And that loan approval email I saw right before you went into surgery? That was the final piece. Mark must have thought he had pulled it off. He thought he could secure the loan, go on the cruise, and when you got the trust money, he would guilt you into paying off the family debt. But I collapsed, I said. You collapsed, Ray nodded. And now the plan is falling apart, because if you are incapacitated, or if the hospital starts digging into your finances to find payment, they might find the fraud. That is why Mark is calling. He is terrified the hospital finance department is going to run a credit check and see a $50,000 loan that you clearly didn't authorize. I looked back at the phone. The text from Mom. Don't talk to anyone about the billing. They weren't afraid of me dying. They were afraid of me talking. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest, but it came out as a dry heave. It was absurd. It was grotesque. I was lying here with half my head shaved and stitched back together, and my parents were on a cruise ship worrying about being indicted for fraud. I am not going to sign anything, I said. I know you aren't, Ray said, but we have a problem. The surgery. The ICU stay. It is going to be expensive. Millie? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. You have student insurance, but it has caps. Just then, there was a soft knock on the glass door of the room. We all turned. A woman in a gray blazer stood there. She was holding a clipboard and had a lanyard around her neck that read, Patient Financial Services. She looked uncomfortable. She looked like someone who had to deliver bad news for a living and never got used to it. Miss Green? She asked softly, stepping into the room. I am sorry to disturb you so soon after you woke up. I am Mrs. Gable from the billing department. Tessa stood up, acting as a shield. She just woke up. Can this wait? I wish it could, Mrs. Gable said, looking genuinely apologetic. But we have had some conflicting communications regarding the guarantor for this account. She walked to the foot of the bed. She didn't look at the monitors. She looked at me. We received a phone call regarding your admission about 20 minutes ago. Mrs. Gable said, From a Mr. Mark Green, your father? I nodded slightly. The motion sent a spike of pain through my temple. He was quite agitated. Mrs. Gable chose her words carefully. He wanted to confirm that he is not the guarantor for your medical expenses. He stated that since you are 23, you are an independent adult. I closed my eyes. Of course, he was cutting the cord. If he wasn't responsible for the debt, he could claim he wasn't responsible for me. That is technically true, Mrs. Gable continued, her voice lowering. However, he then asked a very specific question that raised a flag for us. He asked if we had verified your assets yet. Specifically, he wanted to know if the hospital lays claim to any inheritance or trust funds to cover the balance. My eyes snapped open. Ray let out a low, dangerous growl. He asked if you would take my inheritance, I whispered. He asked if we would lien it, Mrs. Gable corrected. And then he asked, and this is the part that concerns me, Miss Green, he asked if there was any way to discharge the patient to a lower-cost facility because, and I quote, She does not have the funds to pay for premium care, and neither do we. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bridge burning, the structure collapsing into the river below. He wanted to move me. He wanted to kick me out of the ICU to save money, or rather, to ensure there was money left over for him to try and steal later. "He is on a cruise," I said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of fact. Mrs. Gable nodded slowly. I could hear the ocean in the background. I looked at Ray. He was gripping the armrests of the chair so hard his knuckles were white. He looked ready to kill, but I wasn't. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The coldness in my chest solidified into something hard and sharp, like a diamond or a knife. "Mrs. Gable?" I said. My voice was weak, but steady. "Yes, dear?" "My father does not speak for me," I said. "Remove him from my file. Completely. He is not to receive any information. Not about my condition, not about my billing, not about my location." Mrs. Gable nodded, making a note on her clipboard. "I can do that, but we still have the issue of the balance." "I will pay it," I said. "I have the means." I looked at the envelope on the bed, Vivian's promise. "And Mrs. Gable?" I added. "Yes?" "If he calls back," I said, a ghost of a smile touching my lips, a smile that felt entirely new, devoid of warmth but full of power. "Tell him that the patient is unable to come to the phone right now. Tell him I am busy calculating the interest." Mrs. Gable looked confused, but Ray didn't. Ray smiled. It was a dark, grim smile. "I will handle the paperwork," Ray told the woman. "We have got a lawyer coming, a good one." As Mrs. Gable left the room, I picked up my phone again. I looked at the picture of my family on the boat. The smiles, the champagne. I didn't block them, not yet. I wanted them to see. I wanted them to keep calling. I wanted them to sweat. "Tessa," I said. "Yeah, Millie? Take a picture of me," I said. "Bandages and all." "What? Why?" "Because," I said, staring at the black screen of my phone, "I want to post an update. I want them to know I am awake. And I want them to know that while they are playing on a boat, the storm is waiting for them back home." The room smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, but when Elias Thorne walked in, the atmosphere shifted instantly. He brought with him the scent of crisp paper, expensive cologne, and legal consequences. He was a man in his 50s, sharp-featured, and wearing a navy suit that looked like it cost more than my entire college tuition. He didn't look like a hospital visitor. He looked like a shark swimming into a wading pool. "Millie," Grandpa Ray said, standing up and buttoning his wrinkled jacket. "This is Elias Thorne. He is a senior partner at Mariner and Pike Legal Group. He handled your grandmother's estate, and he is here to help us stop the bleeding. Mr. Thorne didn't offer a handshake, probably because I was hooked up to 3 different IV lines, but he gave me a nod that was respectful and grave. He pulled a chair close to the bed, opening a leather briefcase on his lap. "Miss Green," he began, his voice a low, smooth baritone. "First, let me express my sympathies for your medical condition. Your grandfather has filled me in on the basics, but we need to move quickly. Financial fraud is like a bacterial infection. If you do not catch it early, it spreads to every organ of your life." "I want to see it," I said. My voice was raspy, but the fog in my brain had cleared, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. "I want to see everything." Thorne handed me a tablet. I took the liberty of running a comprehensive credit check using the authorization Ray provided this morning. It is extensive. I took the tablet. My fingers felt heavy, but I swiped the screen. The first thing I saw was a credit score. It wasn't the 750 I had worked so hard to build over 4 years of paying my small student bills on time. It was 580. My heart hammered against my ribs, triggering the monitor to beep a little faster. "Scroll down," Thorne said gently. I scrolled. "Open account. Chase Sapphire Reserve. Limit, $30,000. Current balance, $28,000. $450. Status, past due. I stared at the number, $28,000. I don't have this card, I whispered. Look at the billing address. Thorne pointed out, 42 Oak Creek Drive, my parents' house. I scrolled further. Open account. American Express Platinum, limit. Unlimited current balance. $14,200. Recent transactions. Savannah Bridal. Emporium, $4,000. Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, $6,500. Delta Airlines, $3,000. I felt sick, physically sick. The nausea that rose in my throat had nothing to do with my brain surgery. It was the bile of realization. They hadn't just used my money, they had used my future to pay for their present. That cruise they were on? The one where they were posting photos about no obligations? I was paying for it. I was paying for the champagne my mother was drinking in that photo. There is more, Thorne said. He tapped the screen, bringing up a bank statement from a checking account I didn't recognize. This account was opened online 3 months ago. It is in your name. I looked at the transaction history. Debit, the Grand Savannah Estate. Wedding venue. Deposit amount, $10,000. That is where Kelsey is getting married, I said. They told me they were saving for years. They were not saving, Ray said from the corner. His voice was hard. They were waiting for your credit to mature enough to harvest. But how? I asked, looking at Thorne. I never signed for these. Don't you need ID? Don't you need a signature? Thorne reached into his briefcase and pulled out a physical document. He slid it onto the bedsheet. That is what I asked, Thorne said. So I pulled the public records. This was filed with the county clerk 6 months ago. I looked at the document. General Durable Power of Attorney I. Millie Green. Hereby appoint Mark Green as my attorney in fact, giving him full power and authority to act on my behalf regarding all financial and legal matters. My eyes dropped to the bottom of the page. There was a signature, Millie Green. It looped and curved exactly like mine. It had the same slant on the M, the same cross on the T. If I didn't know better, I would have sworn I wrote it. I didn't sign this, I said. I looked up at Ray. Grandpa, I swear, I never signed this. I know you didn't, Ray said. Because on the date that document was notarized, November 14th, you were with me. We were at the movies watching that documentary about the Civil War. You were nowhere near a notary. It is a forgery, Thorne confirmed. A high-quality one, but a forgery nonetheless. And the notary? I checked him out. He is an old golfing buddy of your father's. He likely stamped it without you ever stepping foot in the room. I stared at the paper. It wasn't just theft. It was identity erasure. They had legally become me. They had stripped me of my autonomy so they could strip me of my assets. This is a felony, Thorne said. Multiple felonies, actually forgery, identity theft, wire fraud, bank fraud. My phone buzzed on the bedside table. I picked it up. A text from Kelsey. Kelsey, Dad says the hospital is being difficult about billing. If you do anything to freeze the accounts and mess up my vendor payments, I will ruin you. I mean it. Millie, do not be a jealous brat just because you are in a hospital bed. This is my time. I read the text twice. She knew. She might not know the extent, or she might have convinced herself that borrowing from me was normal family business. But she knew that her wedding was being funded by my name, and her concern wasn't my brain hemorrhage. It was her vendor payments. She says she will ruin me, I said, showing the phone to Thorne. Thorne read the text and adjusted his glasses. A faint, shark-like smile played on his lips. She is threatening a victim of fraud with retaliation. That is helpful. It goes to intent. So what do we do? I asked. Do I call the police? Not yet, Ray interrupted. He walked over to the bed. If you call the police now, Mark and Tracy will spin a story. They will say it was a misunderstanding. They will say they had verbal permission. They will cry and plead family unity. They are good at that. Ray is right, Thorne agreed. We need to catch them in the act. We need undeniable proof that they are acting with malicious intent to defraud you, specifically while you are incapacitated. Thorn pulled out a notepad. Here is the plan. We are going to execute a soft freeze. I'm going to contact the credit bureaus and place a fraud alert, but I'm not going to lock the accounts completely just yet. We want them to try to make one more transaction. We want to see them hit the wall. Why? I asked. Because, Thorn said, right now, they think you are confused. They think you are a scared girl in a hospital bed who might suspect something but doesn't have the guts to act. We need them to feel confident enough to make a mistake. He leaned in closer. Millie, I need you to give me access to your email. We need to see the paper trail, password resets, confirmation codes, everything they have been deleting. Take it, I said. My password is... I hesitated. My password was Family First 2020. I felt a fresh wave of nausea. It is Family First 2020. Thorn nodded and typed it into his laptop. We will change that immediately to something they cannot guess, and we are setting up two-factor authentication to my secure phone, not yours. They will be locked out of your digital life within the hour. And the money? I asked. The $50,000 they just got approved for? We are going to let it sit, Thorn said. We are going to track where they try to move it. If they try to transfer it to an account solely in their name, that is the smoking gun. That is embezzlement. Ray reached into his pocket again. He pulled out the envelope, the one from Grandma Vivian. There is one more thing, Ray said. He held the envelope out, but when I reached for it, he pulled it back slightly. This, Ray said, tapping the thick paper, is the nuclear option. Vivian left you a significant sum. Millie, it is in a protected trust, but there is a clause, a specific condition she wrote in right before she died. What condition? She called it the bad faith clause. Ray said, if the trustees, meaning me, determine that your parents have failed in their parental duties or acted in bad faith regarding your well-being, the trust bypasses the standard distribution age. It triggers an immediate release of funds to you, along with a full legal audit of any assets Mark and Tracy might have commingled with family property. Ray looked at me with intensity. In simple terms, if we open this, and we prove they abandoned you here to die while stealing your money, we don't just protect your money. We can go after theirs. We can sue for the house. We can sue for the cars. We can strip them of everything they have used to maintain this facade. But not yet, Ray added. We open this when they are standing in front of us, when they have to look you in the eye. Wait, Thorn said suddenly. He was looking at his laptop screen, his eyebrows raised. What is it? I asked. Thorn turned the laptop toward me. I just got into your email trash folder, Thorn said. They deleted this 10 minutes ago. It was a DocuSign notification. Pending document. Home equity line of credit. Second mortgage. Amount, $150,000. Applicants, Mark Green, Tracy Green, cosigner, Millie Green. Status, awaiting final signature. They are trying to mortgage the house, Ray said, his face going pale. They are maxing out everything. Look at the status, Thorn pointed out. It says, awaiting wet signature. Because of the amount, the bank won't accept an electronic signature for the cosigner. They need Millie to sign in person. Or they need a notarized affidavit from her. They are on a boat, I said. They can't get my signature. Exactly, Thorn said. His eyes were cold and calculating. They are currently stuck. They have a cruise bill racking up, a wedding to pay for, and the $50,000 loan might not be enough to cover the hole they have dug. They need this second mortgage, and they need your hand to sign it. They will be coming back, Ray realized. The moment they realize the electronic signature didn't go through, and the moment they realize you are awake and might revoke that power of attorney, they will panic. My phone rang. It wasn't a text this time. It was a FaceTime call. Caller ID. Dad. I looked at the phone, then at Ray, then at Thorn. Don't answer, Thorn said. Let it ring. I watched the screen light up my bandaged face. I watched the smiling photo of my father bounce on the screen. "He knows," I whispered. "He knows the bank needs me." "He is not calling to see if you are okay," Ray said, his voice dripping with disgust. "He is calling to see if you can hold a pen." I let the phone ring until it went to voicemail. Thorne closed his laptop. "We have them. They are overextended, desperate, and they just tried to commit mortgage fraud. Now we wait." "Wait for what?" I asked. "For them to run home," Thorne said. "They will cut that cruise short. Not because they love you, but because their ATM has stopped dispensing cash. And when they walk through that door," he looked at the envelope in Ray's hand, "we will be ready to show them exactly what the price of admission is." I lay back against the pillows. My head was throbbing. But for the first time in months, it wasn't from stress. It was from anticipation. I pictured my parents scrambling on that ship, packing their bags, blaming each other, terrified that their house of cards was swaying in the wind. "Let them come," I whispered. "I have a pen, but I'm not signing a mortgage." "No," Ray said, patting my hand. "You are signing their eviction notice." The door to my hospital room did not open. It was thrown open, staged for maximum dramatic effect. My mother, Tracy, led the charge. She was still wearing the white linen pants and floral blouse from the cruise, though now they looked slightly rumpled from travel. Her face was a mask of curated devastation. She rushed toward the bed, her arms outstretched, tears already streaming down her cheeks in perfect mascara-laden tracks. "Millie! Oh, my baby!" she wailed, the sound loud enough to ensure everyone in the hallway knew she was a concerned mother. She threw herself onto me. The scent of coconut sunscreen and stale airplane air filled my nose, overpowering the antiseptic smell of the room. She hugged me, but her hands didn't feel warm. They felt possessive. She wasn't holding a daughter. She was reclaiming an asset. I did not hug her back. I lay perfectly still, my arms resting by my sides on the starched white sheets. My head was bandaged, my face pale, but my eyes were open and dry. "Oh, look at you," Mom sobbed, pulling back just enough to look at my face but keeping her hands on my shoulders. "We were so terrified. We flew back the second we heard. It was a nightmare. Millie, an absolute nightmare for us." "For you," I repeated. My voice was a rasp, devoid of inflection. "For all of us," Dad boomed. Stepping into the room behind her, he looked less like a grieving father and more like a man who had been inconvenienced by a tax audit. He was sunburnt, his face a bright, peeling red. He was holding a frantic energy, his eyes darting around the room, checking the monitors, checking the exits, and finally, checking the bedside table where my personal effects were. "We came straight from the airport," Dad said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Cost a fortune to change the flights, but we didn't care. We had to be here." Kelsey trailed in last. She looked furious. Her hair was frizzy, her tan was uneven, and she was aggressively typing on her phone. She barely looked at me. She slumped against the wall, crossing her arms over her chest. "I can't believe this," Kelsey muttered, loud enough to be heard. "I am supposed to be snorkeling in Nassau right now." "Kelsey!" Mom hissed, though there was no real bite in it. She turned back to me, squeezing my shoulders. "Ignore her. She is just stressed. We are all stressed. Millie, why didn't you tell us you were feeling sick? We never would have left if we knew." I looked at her. I looked deep into her eyes, searching for even a speck of genuine guilt. I found none. I found only panic masquerading as love. "I called," I said. "The doctors called. The nurses called. 50 times. Mom flinched. She looked at Dad. We had no service," Dad stammered, stepping forward. He put a hand on the bed rail, leaning in earnestly. "We were at sea. Millie, you know how it is. Satellites are tricky. The moment we got a signal, we called back. No signal. I said flatly. Dead zone. Dad nodded vigorously. Total blackout. I looked past them to the corner of the room. Tessa. Tessa stepped out of the shadows. She had been sitting quietly in the corner, holding her phone. My parents hadn't even noticed her. Show them, I said. Tessa walked forward. She didn't say a word. She simply held up her phone. The screen brightness turned all the way up. It was a screen recording of my mother's Instagram story. Video plays. My mother, holding a drink, the ocean visible behind her. Audio. Woo! Day 2 and the Wi-Fi is surprisingly fast. Uploading all our pics now. Love this ship. Tessa swiped. Image. Dad checking stocks on his iPad by the pool. Caption. Even on vacation. Business never sleeps. Connected everywhere. Tessa swiped again. Image. A screenshot of the call log on my phone. Time. 2 hours after I was admitted to the ICU. Status. Call rejected. Sent to voicemail. The silence in the room was sudden and suffocating. The mechanical beep of my heart monitor seemed to grow louder. Counting the seconds of their humiliation, Mom dropped her hands from my shoulders as if I had suddenly caught fire. She stepped back, her face flushing a deep, ugly red. That was recorded earlier, Dad lied, though his voice cracked. Social media isn't real life. Millie, you know that. The timestamps are real, I said. You saw the calls. You saw them, and you ignored them because you thought I was just calling to complain about you missing graduation. We didn't know it was a brain hemorrhage, Kelsey snapped, pushing off the wall. God, Millie, stop being such a martyr. You are fine now, aren't you? You are awake. So can we please focus on the fact that I just lost $3,000 on non-refundable excursions because we had to rush back here for you? Kelsey, Dad warned, but he was looking at me, gauging my reaction. No, Dad, Kelsey stomped her foot. She is doing this on purpose. Look at her. She is sitting there like a queen judging us. I have a wedding in 3 weeks. Do you know what this stress does to my skin? You are not here because you care about my brain, I said to Dad. I ignored Kelsey completely. You are here because the bank called you. Dad froze. His eyes narrowed. What? You are here, a deep, gravelly voice cut in from the hallway door. Because you are afraid of losing the money. Grandpa Ray stepped into the room. He looked different. He wasn't the tired old man sleeping in the chair anymore. He stood tall, his shoulders squared. Beside him stood Elias Thorne, the lawyer, holding a thick black binder. Dad? Mark said, looking confused. What are you doing here? And who is this? I have been here for 3 days. Mark, Ray said, walking past his son to stand by my head. While you were drinking Mai Tais, I was holding the bucket while your daughter threw up from pain. While you were posting photos, I was signing consent forms so they could drill a hole in her skull. We came back, Mom shrieked, her voice shrill. We are here now. We are her parents. You are her biological donors, Ray spat. You lost the title of parents when you let it go to voicemail. Who is the suit? Dad asked, pointing a shaking finger at Mr. Thorne. I don't recall inviting any lawyers to a family reunion. Elias Thorne, the lawyer said, placing the black binder on the overbed table with a heavy thud. I represent Millie Green, and I am here to discuss the significant financial irregularities that have come to light during her incapacitation. Financial irregularities? Dad laughed. A nervous, high-pitched sound. What is this? Millie, did you hire a lawyer? Against your own family? I didn't hire him to fight family, I said softly. I hired him to fight thieves. Thieves? Mom gasped, clutching her pearls. How dare you? After everything we have done for you. Open the book, I told Thorne. Thorne flipped the binder open. The plastic sleeves crinkled in the silence. Exhibit A, Thorne said calmly. Chase Sapphire Reserve credit card. Opened 4 months ago. Current balance, $28,450. He pulled out a printed statement and laid it on the table. I see charges for a bridal shower venue, a deposit for a photographer, and plane tickets to Nassau. Thorne looked at Dad over the rim of his glasses. Millie did not open this card. She has never seen this card. So, Mark, I have to ask, who did? Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. That is, we have a shared understanding. Millie knows we help manage her credit to build her score. It is a strategy. Strategy? I asked. Is spending $28,000 a strategy? Or is it spending? It was for the family, Mom interjected. We were going to pay it back. When your father's bonus came in, or when I got Grandma Vivian's trust money. I finished the sentence for her. The room went dead still. Mom's eyes went wide. She looked at Dad. They hadn't realized I knew about the trust. We don't know what you are talking about, Dad said, wiping his palms on his pants. What trust? Don't insult my intelligence, Mark, Ray growled. You knew. You have been waiting for her to turn 23 like a vulture waiting for a deer to die. Thorne flipped the page. Exhibit B. A loan application for $50,000, approved 2 days ago. The funds were slated to be deposited into an account that, upon investigation, lists Mark Green as the sole signatory, despite the loan being in Millie's name. That is a clerical error, Dad shouted. The bank made a mistake. And Exhibit C, Thorne continued. Ignoring him, he pulled out the document that made my stomach turn the most. The power of attorney. A general durable power of attorney, Thorne read. Notarized 6 months ago, granting Mark Green full control over Millie's assets. Thorne held up the paper. He pointed to the signature at the bottom. Millie, Thorne asked, looking at me. Did you sign this? No, I said clearly. Did you authorize this? No. Thorne turned the paper toward my father. Mark, this is a forgery. And not just a forgery. It is a federal crime. Using a forged document to obtain credit is bank fraud. The penalty is up to 30 years in prison. Dad's face lost all its color. He grabbed the bed rail to steady himself. Now, wait a minute, Dad stammered. Let's not throw around words like prison. We are a family. Sometimes we sign things for each other to save time. It is convenience. Millie, tell him you would have signed it if we asked. But you didn't ask, I said. You stole. We needed the money, Kelsey screamed suddenly. She stepped away from the wall, her face twisted and ugly. God, you are so selfish. Do you know how much a wedding costs? Do you? Mom and Dad promised me the dream wedding, they promised. And then Dad made some bad investments, and the money was gone. Kelsey, shut up, Dad roared. No, Kelsey yelled back. I am not going to lose my venue because Millie is being a stingy little brat. She has a trust fund coming. She doesn't even need it. She is just a teacher. I have a reputation to maintain. She turned to me, pointing a manicured finger at my face. You owe us this, Millie. You lived in our house. You ate our food. If we need to use your credit for a few months to get through a rough patch, that is the least you can do. I looked at my sister. I saw the entitlement rotting her from the inside out. She truly believed that my financial ruin was a fair price for her floral arrangements. I owe you nothing, I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a final judgment. I paid rent. I bought my own groceries. I worked double shifts while you got manicures. I looked at Dad. He was shaking now, a visible tremor in his hands. Here is the deal, I said. I nodded to Thorne. He pulled a pre-typed document out of the binder. 1, I said. You will sign a full confession, admitting to the forgery, the identity theft, and the unauthorized loans. I can't sign that, Dad whispered. I will go to jail. 2, I continued. You will agree to liquidate whatever assets necessary. Your car, your retirement, I don't care. To pay off every cent of debt in my name within 30 days. We can't, Mom sobbed. We don't have that kind of cash. That is why we needed the loans. 3, I said. You will sign a restraining order against yourselves regarding my finances. You will never touch a penny of my money again, and you will never use my name again. And if we don't? Dad asked. He tried to summon some of his old authority, puffing out his chest. You are bluffing, Millie. You wouldn't send your own father to prison. You wouldn't humiliate us like that. Think of the neighbors. Think of Kelsey's wedding. If you don't sign, I said. Mr. Thorne walks out of this room and goes straight to the district attorney's office. He has the file ready. The police are already curious about the loan fraud. We just have to hand them the map. Dad looked at Thorne. Thorne didn't blink. He just tapped his pen against the confession document. Millie, please, Mom begged. Grabbing my hand again, I pulled it away sharply. We are family. You can't destroy us. I didn't destroy you, I said. You destroyed yourselves when you decided I was a bank account instead of a daughter. I hate you, Kelsey shrieked. I hope you die in this hospital. You are ruining everything. Sign the paper, Ray barked, or I call the cops myself right now. Dad looked at Mom. Mom was weeping into her hands. Kelsey was pacing, muttering curses. Dad picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He looked at me one last time, his eyes pleading. Millie, baby, please. Sign it, I said. He signed. He signed the confession. He signed the agreement to pay. He signed away his control over me. When he finished, he dropped the pen. He looked like a deflated balloon. Are we done? Dad whispered. Can we go? Not yet, Grandpa Ray said. Ray walked to the table. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the thick, yellowed envelope that had been resting on his lap during the graduation. You mentioned the trust, Ray said, looking at Mark. You thought you were going to get your hands on Vivian's money to pay off the mess you made. It doesn't matter now, Dad muttered. Millie controls it. Oh, it matters, Ray said, because there was a condition Vivian wrote down 10 years ago, right before she died. She gave me this envelope and told me to open it only on the day Millie graduated, and only if her family was present. Ray held up the envelope. The seal was still unbroken. But since you decided to skip the graduation, Ray said, his voice dropping to a whisper, and since you decided to commit felonies against the beneficiary, Ray ripped the envelope open. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. He pulled out a single sheet of heavy cream-colored paper. He adjusted his glasses and began to read. To my granddaughter Millie, Ray read, and to my son Mark. Ray looked up. A strange smile played on his lips. It says here, Ray continued, that the bulk of the estate, the house you live in, Mark, and the beach cottage, and the investment portfolio, was never actually transferred to you. Mark, it was held in a revocable living trust. Dad frowned. What? No. Mom gave me the house. She gave you the right to reside in the house, Ray corrected, as long as you remained the guardian of her granddaughter in good standing. Ray turned the page over. But here is the kicker, Ray said. Cliffhanger clause, Section 4. If at any time Mark Green is found to have acted with financial impropriety against Millie Green, or is found to have neglected her welfare. Ray paused. He looked at my parents, who were now paralyzed with a new, deeper fear. Then his right to reside is immediately revoked. The house, the cottage, and all assets revert directly to the sole beneficiary, Millie Green, and Mark Green is to be evicted with 30 days' notice. Ray lowered the paper. You don't just owe Millie the money you stole, Ray said softly. You are standing in her house. The first breath of air outside the hospital tasted like freedom. It wasn't just the absence of antiseptic, it was the absence of weight. I was discharged 2 weeks after the surgery. My head was still tender, covered by a beanie to hide the shaved patch, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. The constant thrum of anxiety, the feeling that I had to perform, to please, to earn my place, was gone. It had been surgically removed along with the clot. I didn't go back to my parents' house. I didn't even go back to pack my things. Tessa went with two of her cousins, large, silent men who worked in construction, and retrieved my clothes, my books, and the few sentimental items I owned. I moved into a small apartment near the high school where I would be teaching in the fall. It was a studio, barely 500 square feet, with peeling beige paint and a radiator that clanked in the night. But the lease was in my name, the keys were in my pocket, and the silence in the room was mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Millie the fixer, I was just Millie. But while I was finding peace, my lawyer, Elias Thorne, was unleashing war. Thorne didn't scream, he didn't send angry texts, he sent certified letters. The first wave hit the banks. Thorne filed a formal identity theft report with the Federal Trade Commission and sent copies to Chase, American Express, and the bank where the fraudulent loan had been approved. The result was immediate and catastrophic for my parents. Because I had formally declared the accounts fraudulent, the banks were legally required to freeze them pending investigation. This meant that every card my parents used, the ones they had linked to my credit, the ones they used for groceries, gas, and Kelsey's wedding vendors, stopped working instantly. I heard about it from Tessa. "Your mom tried to pay for her Pilates class yesterday," Tessa told me over coffee in my new kitchen. Card declined. She made a huge scene, told them their machine was broken. Then she tried another card, declined. She had to write a check. "Checks take 3 days to clear," I said, sipping my tea. "She has time." "Not anymore," Tessa smirked. Thorne sent the fraud alert to the checking accounts, too. Any account where funds were commingled with the fraudulent loan proceeds is frozen. The phone calls started a day later. My phone, now set to permanently silence calls from Mom, Dad, and Kelsey, lit up with voicemails. I didn't listen to them. I forwarded them directly to Thorne's office. He had a paralegal whose sole job was to transcribe them for the case file. I read the transcripts. Transcript 402. Mark Green. "Millie, you have to stop this. The bank froze the joint account. We can't pay the mortgage. We can't buy food. You are taking this too far. It was a misunderstanding. Call the bank and tell them it was authorized." Transcript 405. Tracy Green. "People are talking. Millie, the florist called and said the check bounced. Do you know how embarrassing that is? You are humiliating your sister. Call us back." I put the transcripts in a folder marked Evidence. I didn't feel guilty. I felt like a mechanic who had finally cut the fuel line to a runaway car. They weren't crashing because of me. They were crashing because they had been running on stolen gas for years. Kelsey, predictably, took her rage to the public square. A week after I moved in, my social media feed, which I still checked, though I never posted, began to populate with vague, passive-aggressive updates from my sister. Post 1. "It is funny how some people claim to be family, but disappear when you need them most. Jealousy is a disease. Get well soon." Post 2. "Wedding planning is hard enough without toxic people trying to sabotage your happiness. Trusting God to remove the snakes from my garden." Post 3. A photo of her crying. Caption: "Heartbroken. Some people will burn down your house just to warm their hands." The comments were filled with her friends offering sympathy. "OMG who? Stay strong, babe. Haters gonna hate." I didn't reply. I didn't post a truth video. I didn't engage. "Aren't you going to say something?" Tessa asked. Scrolling through the comments. "She is making you look like a monster." "Let her talk," I said calmly. "She is fighting a PR war. I am fighting a legal one." While she is posting memes, Thorne is subpoenaing the IP logs from the bank. The twist came from a direction none of us expected. It wasn't the banks, and it wasn't the police. It was Brent. Brent was Kelsey's fiancé. He came from a family of old money Savannah quiet wealth, people who didn't post about their vacations and who valued discretion above all else. I had always liked Brent. He was kind, if a bit oblivious to Kelsey's mean streak. One Tuesday evening, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Brent standing there. He wasn't wearing his usual polo and boat shoes. He was wearing a suit, and he looked pale. I opened the door. "Brent?" "Millie," he said. He didn't step in. He stood in the hallway, wringing his hands. I heard you were out of the hospital. I wanted to see if you were okay. Kelsey said you were unstable." "I am fine, Brent," I said. "My brain is healing. My credit score is the only thing that is unstable." He flinched. He looked down at his shoes. "My parents' lawyer called me today," Brent said quietly. "Apparently, your lawyer, Mr. Thorne, sent a notice to all vendors associated with the wedding deposits, letting them know that the funds used for the deposits were contested." "Stolen," I corrected. "The word is stolen." Brent looked up. His eyes were wide and terrified. "Millie, is it true? Did they really use your identity?" "Yes," I said. "They forged my signature. They took out loans in my name, and they used that money to pay for the venue, the photographer, and your engagement party." Brent leaned against the doorframe as if he had been punched. If my mother finds out that the wedding is being paid for with fraud money, she will cancel it. The scandal would kill her." "The scandal is coming, Brent," I said gently. "Whether I talk or not, the banks are involved. The police are investigating. It is not a family squabble anymore. It is a federal case." "Kelsey told me you were just mad because they went on the cruise," Brent whispered. "She said you cut them off out of spite." "I cut them off because they left me in an ICU to die so they could secure a loan," I said. I saw the realization hit him, the horror. He wasn't just marrying a spoiled girl, he was marrying into a criminal enterprise. "I have to go," Brent said abruptly. He turned and practically ran down the hallway. 2 days later, Kelsey's engagement status on Facebook changed to "It's complicated." Meanwhile, Grandpa Ray was executing his own surgical strikes. For years, I had assumed my parents were just bad with money. I didn't know that Ray had been quietly subsidizing them. He paid for their car insurance. He covered the property taxes on the house. He slipped them cash for emergencies. "I stopped the auto drafts," Ray told me over the phone. "The insurance on the Lexus is canceled as of midnight. The property tax check for this quarter? Torn up." "They are going to drown, Grandpa," I said. "They have been drowning for 20 years, Ray said. "I have just been holding their heads up, and by doing so, I let them stand on your shoulders. No more. If they want to swim, they can kick." Then came the final insult. I was at the clinic for a follow-up with my neurologist. The receptionist, a sweet woman named Patty, called me to the desk. "Millie, honey, I have a weird note in your file," she said, frowning at her computer screen. "It says here that a Mrs. Green called yesterday requesting a copy of your billing statement for tax purposes. She had your social security number." My blood ran cold. Even now, even after the confrontation, even after the lawyers, they were still trying. "Did you give it to her?" I asked. "No," Patty said, "because there is a flag on your file from Mr. Thorne." But she was persistent. She said she needed to know the total asset liability for a mortgage application. They weren't trying to pay my bill. They were trying to use my medical debt as a tax write-off. Or worse, they were trying to calculate exactly how much of the trust they needed to steal to cover their tracks. "Patty," I said, "note the time of that call and send it to Elias Thorne." "You got it." I walked out of the clinic. The sun was setting. Casting long shadows over the parking lot, I sat on a bench and pulled out a notebook. It was my graduation speech, the one I never got to finish. I read the words I had written months ago. "We are the architects of tomorrow." Support systems. Gratitude. It felt like it was written by a stranger. A naive child. I took a pen and crossed it all out. Every line. I started writing a new speech. Not for an audience. Not for a grade. For me. To the people who were supposed to catch me. I wrote, "Thank you for letting me fall. Because in the fall, I learned that I can fly without you. I learned that my value isn't in what I can give you, but in what I can keep for myself." I wrote until the sun went down. It wasn't a speech of revenge. It was a eulogy, I was bearing the daughter they wanted and birthing the woman I was. That night, Ray called me. "It is time," he said. "Time for what?" "The eviction," Ray said. "Thorne has the paperwork for the trust transfer. The deed to the house is officially in your name as of this morning. The bad faith clause held up." "So it is mine?" I asked. "The house I grew up in?" "It is yours," Ray said. "And tomorrow, we are going to tell them." "Where?" "Thorne's office, 10 a. I told them if they want to avoid immediate arrest, they better be there. Will they come?" "Oh, they will come." Ray chuckled darkly. Desperation has a way of making people punctual. "Okay," I said. "I will be there." "Millie," Ray added, "bring a pen. A good one. You are going to enjoy this signature." I hung up. I looked around my tiny apartment. It was quiet. It was small. But it was safe. Tomorrow. I would walk into a room with the people who raised me, and I would take away the roof over their heads. I wondered if I would feel guilty. I searched my heart for that familiar pang of obligation. I found nothing, just the steady, rhythmic beat of a heart that was finally beating for itself. "Tomorrow," I whispered. "It ends." The conference room at Mariner and Pike was designed to intimidate. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Savannah River, a mahogany table long enough to land a plane on, and air conditioning set to a temperature that could preserve meat. I sat at the head of the table. Grandpa Ray was to my right. Elias Thorne was to my left. My parents and Kelsey sat on the opposite side. They looked like schoolchildren called to the principal's office, but they were still trying to play the part of the aggrieved family. Mom was wearing a pastel cardigan and twisting a tissue in her hands. Dad was trying to look authoritative, but his eyes kept darting to the thick stack of documents in front of Thorne. Kelsey was aggressively checking her phone, likely looking for updates from Brent, who had not spoken to her in 3 days. "Millie?" Mom started, her voice trembling with that practiced fragility she used whenever she wanted something. "This is all so unnecessary. Lawyers? Conference rooms? We are a family. We can sort this out at the kitchen table over some tea." "We tried the kitchen table," I said. My voice was steady. "At the kitchen table. You told me I was selfish for having a brain hemorrhage. At the kitchen table. You told me you were going on a cruise while I was in the ICU." "We apologized for that," Dad interrupted, leaning forward. "We told you. It was a miscommunication. We thought you had a migraine. If we had known it was serious, we never would have boarded that ship." "That is a lie," Elias Thorne said. He didn't look up from his file. "Excuse me?" Dad bristled. "You are calling me a liar?" "I am stating a fact based on evidence," Thorne said. He pulled a sheet of paper from the stack and slid it across the polished wood. "This is the log from St. Alder Medical Center," Thorne explained. "At 10:15 in the morning, Nurse Sarah Jenkins called your number. You answered," she explicitly stated. And I quote from the transcript. "Your daughter has collapsed. She is unresponsive. We suspect a severe neurological event. The call lasted 45 seconds. You hung up. 10 minutes later. You posted a photo of a cocktail with the caption, 'Vacation mode activated.'" Dad went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. "You didn't leave because you didn't know," Ray said, his voice hard as granite. "You left because you didn't care, and you thought if you were out of the country, you couldn't be held responsible for the bill." "That is not true," Mom cried. "We love Millie. We would do anything for her." "Anything except answer the phone," I said, "and anything except pay for your own lives." "Can we just get to the point?" Kelsey snapped, slamming her phone down on the table. "I have a wedding coordinator blowing up my phone because the deposit check bounced. When are you going to unfreeze the accounts? Millie, you made your point. You are the victim. Bravo. Now fix it so I can get married." I looked at my sister. I looked at the selfishness radiating off her like heat waves. "I am not unfreezing anything," I said. "What?" Dad asked. "Millie, be reasonable. We have a mortgage due. We have car payments. If those accounts stay frozen, we lose everything." You don't have a mortgage, Ray corrected. The room went silent. Dad frowned. Of course I have a mortgage. I have been paying it. Well, you have been helping pay it for 20 years. Ray reached for the envelope, the yellowed, thick envelope from Grandma Vivian that had been the sword hanging over their heads for weeks. He placed it in the center of the table. Mark, Ray said softly, do you remember the terms of your mother's will? Yeah, Dad shrugged. She left the house to me, and she put some money in a trust for Millie. Not exactly, Ray said. He tapped the envelope. Vivian knew you. She knew you had a hole in your pocket where your conscience should be. So she didn't leave you the house. She created the Vivian Promise Trust. Ray opened the envelope. He pulled out the deed. The house, Ray explained, is owned by the trust. You were granted a life estate based on a condition of good stewardship, specifically, the care and competence clause. Ray put on his reading glasses. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the break room down the hall. The clause states, Ray read, that Mark Green shall maintain the right to reside in the family home solely on the condition that he acts as a responsible guardian and protector of the trust's ultimate beneficiary. Millie Green. Should Mark Green be found to have acted in bad faith, or should he abandon the beneficiary in a time of medical or financial crisis? The life estate is immediately terminated. Ray looked up over his glasses. Terminated, Ray repeated, meaning you don't own the house. Mark, you are a tenant who just violated the lease. Dad stared at Ray. He looked like he had been hit with a shovel. You can't kick us out. It is my house. I grew up there. It was Vivian's house, Ray said, and she left it to the person she knew would actually take care of it. She left it to Millie. Millie? Mom whispered. She turned to me, her eyes wide with horror. You own the house? As of this morning, Thorne confirmed. When Mr. Ray Green filed the affidavit of abandonment along with the hospital records and the police report regarding the identity theft, the title transferred automatically. It is done. So, I said, leaning back in my chair, here is where we stand. You are living in my house. You are driving cars that are technically leased under a credit line that I'm about to report as fraudulent. And you owe me $78,000 in stolen funds. 78? Dad choked. It was only 50. Interest, I said coldly. And legal fees. And the cost of the therapy I'm going to need to get over the fact that my parents are parasites. Millie, please, Mom begged, tears streaming down her face again. We are homeless? Is that what you want? To see your parents on the street? I want justice, I said. You didn't care if I died on the street. Mom, you asked the billing department to move me to a cheaper hospital while I was in a coma. That was your father, Mom screamed, pointing at Dad. He made the call. I told him it was a bad idea. Oh, throw me under the bus now? Dad shouted, turning on her. You were the one who wanted the cruise. You said, let's just go. She is tough. She will be fine. You wanted the tan. I wanted to relax, Mom yelled back. You are the one who gambled away our savings on that stupid crypto scheme. That is why we needed Millie's credit in the first place. Shut up, Dad roared. Both of you shut up, Kelsey shrieked. She stood up, her face red and blotchy. Are you telling me there is no money? None? What about the trust? The cash? The cash follows the house, Ray said calmly. It goes to Millie. Kelsey looked at me. For a second, I saw pure hatred in her eyes. But then, it crumbled into desperation. Millie, Kelsey said, her voice shaking. My wedding. It is in 3 weeks. The vendors are going to walk if they don't get paid today. Brent, if this falls apart, Brent leaves me. I know he will. Please, just give me enough for the wedding. I will pay you back. I promise. With what money, Kelsey? I asked. You don't have a job. You have never had a job. You were counting on marrying rich. I am your sister, Kelsey wailed. You told me to die in the hospital, I reminded her. You texted me and said I was selfish for ruining your trip. You posted on Facebook that I was a toxic snake. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "This is the deal," I said. I slid the paper to the center of the table. "Option A," I said. "I press charges, mister." Thorne hands the file to the district attorney. Dad goes to prison for bank fraud and identity theft. Mom likely goes down as an accomplice. I evict you immediately, and I sue you for every penny you ever make for the rest of your lives. The room was silent. Dad was sweating profusely. "Option B," I continued. "You sign this document." Dad looked at the paper. "What is it?" "It is a confession," I said. "A full admission of guilt, but it is also a repayment plan. You will surrender the keys to the house within 30 days. You will turn over any assets you have, jewelry, electronics, the car, to be sold to pay down the debt, and you will agree to a permanent restraining order regarding my finances and my person." "We lose the house?" Mom whispered. "But where will we go?" "I hear there are some affordable apartments in North Savannah," I said. "Small ones, like the one I live in." "And the wedding?" Kelsey asked, her voice small. "The wedding is canceled," I said, "unless you can pay for it yourself." "You are a monster," Kelsey spat. "No," I said. "I am the bank, and I am foreclosing." Dad picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled against the table. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the father. He wasn't a patriarch. He was a coward. A weak, small man who had used his own child as a shield against the world. "Why?" Dad asked softly. "Why are you doing this, Millie? We raised you. We fed you. Why do you hate us?" "I don't hate you," I said. "I just realized that you don't love me. You love what I can do for you. You said it yourself, Dad. Millie can handle it. Millie is the strong one. You used my strength as an excuse for your weakness." "I did it to save the family," Dad mumbled. I thought if I could just fix the debt, everything would be okay. I used your name because I knew you would forgive me. I knew you would take the hit. You always take the hit." There it was, the truth. "I am not taking the hit anymore," I said. "Sign the paper." Dad looked at Mom. She nodded. Defeated. He signed. Mom signed. Kelsey refused to sign as a witness, so Thorne had his paralegal do it. When it was done, Thorne collected the papers. "You have 30 days to vacate the property," Thorne said professionally. "Do not remove any fixtures or appliances. We will be conducting a walkthrough." 30 days, Dad repeated numbly. "Come on," Mom said. Standing up, she looked old. "Let's go." They walked out of the room. They didn't look back. They didn't say goodbye. Kelsey followed them, sobbing into her phone, probably leaving a voicemail for Brent that he would never return. I sat there in the silence. I looked at the empty chairs. I expected to feel sad. I expected to mourn the loss of my family. But as I looked out the window at the river, watching a cargo ship slowly make its way out to sea, I felt something else. I felt light. "You okay, Millibug?" Ray asked, placing his hand on my shoulder. I looked up at him. "I am okay. Grandpa, I really am." Ray smiled. He picked up the envelope, the empty envelope that had held my freedom. "Vivian would have been proud of you today. You didn't just survive them. You outsmarted them." "I had help," I said, squeezing his hand. I stood up. I picked up the signed confession. It was just a piece of paper, but it weighed more than gold. It was my Declaration of Independence. "What now?" Tessa asked, standing by the door. She had been silent the whole time, witnessing the carnage. "Now?" I said. "Now I go to work. I have a lesson plan to write for the fall." "And the house?" Ray asked. "What are you going to do with a 4-bedroom house?" "I am going to sell it," I said without hesitation. "I don't want their ghosts. I am going to sell it, pay off the debt they created, and put the rest into a real savings account, one that only I can access." We walked out of the office together. Ray, Tessa, and me. We stepped into the elevator as the doors closed, shutting out the view of the expensive conference room. I took a deep breath. My head didn't hurt. The beeping monitors were gone. The frantic texts were silenced. I had lost my parents, yes. But I had found myself. The elevator dinged at the ground floor. The doors opened to the lobby, bright with sunlight streaming in from the street. "Lunch is on me," Ray announced. "I feel like a steak. I could eat." I smiled. We walked out into the heat of the Savannah afternoon. I didn't look back at the building. I didn't check my phone. I just walked forward, one step at a time, into a life that was finally, completely, and wonderfully mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on how I handled my family. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel Lucy Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit the bell to help this story reach more people. Your support means the world to me.